Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our joint hearing this afternoon. I'm Councilmember Jennifer Gutierrez, and I'm the chair for the Committee on Technology. I'm pleased to be joined by my colleagues, Chair Camilla Hanks and Chair Sandra Ung, for this important hearing on media transparency in relation to NYPD radio encryption, the press credentials process, and government social media archiving. The Technology Committee has held hearings on a variety of technology-related subjects this session. A persistent issue in every hearing, regardless of the topic, has been the importance of transparency, in which the administration continues to fall short. The Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment, or MOME, which falls under the Technology Committee's jurisdiction, was granted exclusive authority to establish rules around press credentials after the Council passed Local Law 46 of 2021. The press credentials process is vital to maintaining a regular flow of communication that keeps the public informed, and maintaining its integrity is critical to ensuring freedom of the press. Access to the NYPD's radio communications is another indispensable means by which journalists have kept the public informed about their communities. This access was available for over 90 years prior to this summer in July 2023. Some of the first precincts to go dark, the 90th and the 9-4 in Williamsburg and the 83rd in Bushwick, are in my district. This creates a dangerous opportunity for misinformation to spread in the absence of verifiable information from real-time reporting, and also removes a critical accountability measure for the NYPD. Ensuring access to primary sources is increasingly crucial. I'd also like to voice my support for Intro 961, sponsored by my colleague, Councilmember Brewer. Archiving government social media accounts is crucial for public accountability, and this includes elected officials. Social media has become the primary communications platform for government and elected officials, but because posts can be deleted by users, creating a public archived record of government social media accounts creates accountability and transparency. I'm looking forward to hearing about the NYPD's plan around encryption and creating public access to NYPD activity, along with facilitating a better understanding of the protocols in place for press credentials. I'm also looking forward to hearing testimony from the public, including members of the media, and I'm hopeful that the members of the administration here will stay to listen to it. I'd like to thank the Technology Committee staff, including our counsel, Irene Bayovsky, and policy analyst Charles Kim, and my chief of staff, Anna Bessendorf, senior advisor, Anya Lear, and I'd like to recognize all committee members, all council members who are here this afternoon. I'll start to my left with council members Holden, Areola, of course, Chair Ung and Chair Hanks, who's joined us, council member Stevens, council member Joseph, council member Ressler, and council member Hanif. Do we have anyone online? Any members online? No. Wonderful. I will now turn it over to council member Chair Hanks. Welcome for her opening statement.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Chair Gutierrez. I am Camilla Hanks, Chair of the Committee on Public Safety. And I welcome everyone today to the hearing on the Committees of Technology and Governmental Operations. Today, we are reviewing and assessing a significant development in public safety and transparency in the city of New York, one that affects toward radio encryption, a process aimed at enhancing security and protecting the critical police communications. While NYPD cites legitimate concerns regarding the need to govern its own radio transmissions from potential misuse and security breaches, it is important to consider the delicate balance that ensures public safety, upholds the principles of transparency, and preserves media's access to timely information. This hearing revolves around more than just technology. It touches on a shared responsibility we all have to keep New Yorkers safe as well as well-informed. Additionally, we will explore the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment, criteria of approving press credentials, and how MoME prevents individuals with questionable journalistic backgrounds from accessing credentials to safeguard journalistic integrity. We will also be hearing, Governmental Operations Committee will be hearing Introduction 691, sponsored by Councilmember Brewer, which I am in support of, that seeks to mandate the Department of Records and Information Services to establish a publicly accessible and searchable online database of official government social media accounts. Today, we continue the dialogue at NYPD radio, encryption, and media transparency, exploring the implications, challenges, and opportunities that lie ahead. I look forward to the testimony of NYPD, the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment, and the New York City Department of Records and Information Services, medias of the media and public, thank you so much for your participation in this critical discussion. Thank you. And I will turn this over to Chair Ung. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Councilmember Sandra Ong, Chair of the Committee on Governmental Operations. I'm thrilled to be conducting today's hearing jointly with the Committee on Public Safety and the Committee on Technology. I began by thanking my co-chairs, Councilmember Hanks and Councilmember Gutierrez, on all their teams on their hard work in putting this hearing together. So many of my colleagues are here today, use some type of social media to inform, educate, and engage with their constituents. It's important that these communications be maintained somewhere that's accessible to both the press and the public. The Department of Records Information Services, otherwise known as DORIS, the agency charged with archiving the city records, only archives social media accounts of mayoral agencies. With the exception of the mayor and the controller, it does not archive the official social media accounts of any elected officials. Today, the committee will be hearing Intro 961, introduced by Councilmember Brewer, that will create a publicly accessible and searchable archive of official governmental social media accounts. This bill will expand DORI's existing archive to include official social media accounts of additional elected officials. With that, I'd like to thank Jasiri Ganapi and Erica Cohen from the central staff for their work in putting this hearing together, as well as my own Chief of Staff, Alexander Hart, and Communication Director Shane Miller for their assistance. I now will turn it over to Councilmember Hanks.
Thank you so much, and I'll send it over to call the credentials.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll now swear in our panel of administration witnesses. With us from the NYPD today, we have Chief Ruben Beltran, Managing Attorney Julianne Farguccia, Director Scott Simone. From the Department of Records and Information Services, we have Pauline Toole. And from the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment, we have Samer Nasser and Stanislav Scarbo. If you could each please raise your right hands. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee and respond honestly to council member questions? Noting for the record that all witnesses answered affirmatively, you may begin your testimony in whichever order you choose.
Sorry about that. Now I can start. Good afternoon, Chair Hanks, Chair Gutierrez, Chair Ung, and members of the council. I am Ruben Beltran, the Chief of the Information Technology Bureau of the New York City Police Department. I am joined today by Scott Simone, Director of Life Safety Systems Division, and Julianne Farrugia, the Managing Attorney of the Department's Legislative Affairs Unit, as well as our partners from the Department of Records and Information Services and the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment. On behalf of Police Commissioner Edward Caban, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to discuss the importance of the department's radio infrastructure to public safety. It is NYPD's mission to keep those who live in, work in, and visit our city safe. And the number one tool we have in accomplishing that goal is the skill, passion, and dedication of the men and women who put on the NYPD uniform each day. To this end, the department remains committed to providing our officers with the best technological tools to further this objective. Leveraging the latest technology is imperative, and there is no more important single piece of equipment to keeping New Yorkers and officers safe than the simple, everyday police radio. Without this lifeline to Central Dispatch and other officers, the entire concept of how we provide public safety would look very different. The radios our officers carry and the infrastructure that supports them are quite simply the backbone of policing in the city, and it has been that way for decades. Now, I just said that radios are simple, and they may seem that way to the uninitiated, but that cannot be farther from the truth. In our unflinching quest to remain at the cutting edge of policing and technology, the NYPD is constantly upgrading and adapting our communication systems, and what we have now is a fully integrated modern radio system which works seamlessly both above and below ground in transit and tunnels. The system is currently comprised of over 300 radio antenna sites around the city, as well as hundreds of other forms of transmission sites, to support the 42,000 radios our members carry, as well as 2 independent and redundant public safety answering centers, or PSACs, which field and route 911 calls for service. All of this is necessary to ensure the millions of 911 calls and radio runs our officers respond to every year are relayed seamlessly, saving countless lives. To put this in perspective, last year there were 7.9 million of these radio runs, and year to date so far we have 7.2 million. In each of these calls there are many, many more individual radio transmissions between central dispatch and uniformed police officers in the field. This is without mentioning the millions upon millions of times radios are used in other contexts every year. Our system really shows the extent of its capabilities during large-scale events such as New Year's Eve, parades, and mass protests, where if officers are not able to communicate with dispatch and each other, things could spiral out of control quickly and many lives would be put in danger. But more can always be done. As part of the department's technology refresh project, the Information Technology Bureau is upgrading our radio system with new radios, transmitters, radio dispatch consoles, antenna systems, and associated cables and components. We are moving from conventional analog to public safety P25 digital standard, which requires the installation of fiber optic Ethernet circuits in 300 plus locations throughout the city. By the end of 2024, the entire system will be fully digital, increasing the quality and reliability of every aspect of the radio communication system citywide, and remaining in compliance with FCC guidelines. This project is a massive undertaking and is projected to cost $390 million by the time it is completed, with approximately $190 million going to infrastructure and approximately $200 million to purchase and replace existing portable devices. This is money that has been budgeted for and is absolutely necessary to ensure we stay ahead of the curve in that aspect. Beginning this summer, the NYPD began the transition to the new system in Brooklyn North precincts. And as of today, Brooklyn North is fully upgraded to the P25 digital system. This also has the effect of fully encrypting the radio's communications in these zones. This encryption is necessary to ensure operational safety and security. Criminal groups have been known to monitor the radio in order to strike vulnerable areas when officers are required to respond to events at other locations. Encryption is also necessary to achieve the highest level of authentication, network access control, and informational security as well. The identities and locations of victims and witnesses may be compromised without securing our communications, putting people's safety at risk. It would be irresponsible and a dereliction of our duty not to do everything in our power to prevent this information from getting to people who would harass or harm our vulnerable population. Importantly, this transition is necessary because, unfortunately, the one thing the existing system is not immune to is unauthorized interloper cyber attacks in the form of electronic warfare on our channels. Off-the-shelf portable radio technology, which enables people with malicious intent to access our channels, has become far more sophisticated, while at the same time becoming far more accessible and less expensive. In recent years, we have seen numerous incidents where interlopers have used our radio frequencies to disrupt police operations. Examples include fake officer down transmissions to draw officers away from a given area, officers' lives being threatened over the air, fake bomb threats, or simply jamming our radio frequencies temporarily, disrupting our ability to respond to legitimate communications. Several years ago, there was a concerted effort online to instruct individuals on how to interfere with NYPD radio communications, and these threats will only become more commonplace. More broadly, we have no way of knowing who is listening in on our radio transmissions and tracking where our officers are responding. The P25 digital system will allow us to know exactly who is accessing the system and where they are, because a special key is necessary to get into the system. Notably, since these precinct communications have been encrypted, there have been 0 instances of interloping on these channels. Hundreds of police department and first responder organizations encrypt their radio communications, including federal law enforcement, the Port Authority, major cities such as Chicago, Denver, Washington, D.C., New Orleans, St. Louis, Las Vegas, Albuquerque, Nashville, Fort Worth, Houston, San Antonio, and Milwaukee, as well as our neighbors in Nassau and Bergen counties. A lack of encryption presents a specific challenge when it comes to federal law enforcement agencies such as the FBI. New York is a city like no other, and the unique threats our city faces requires unparalleled collaboration between NYPD and federal law enforcement. But because our current system is unencrypted, it does not enable radio interoperability between the federal communication systems and ours. The department's use of the P25 digital standard allows authorized roaming and network access between neighboring land mobile radio networks where secure joint operations can be unified across multiple agencies. We have heard the concerns over transparency, and some claim that the need for this specific kind of broad exposure outweighs the many downsides and dangers of remaining unnecessarily vulnerable when the technology exists to prevent it. We respectfully but adamantly disagree. The NYPD is the most transparent police force in the country, and we operate under numerous levels of oversight and accountability. And allowing the status quo to continue will unnecessarily put our city at risk and prevent our dedicated officers from using the advanced technology needed to allow them to fulfill their public safety mandate. There are minimal substantive gains in transparency to be made with regards to everyday New Yorkers by remaining unencrypted, which we believe would be insignificant to non-existent, as there are numerous other avenues for people and elected officials to be kept abreast of the goings-ons in their communities. Every police radio communication is recorded and may be made public through Freedom of Information requests. The department often proactively publicizes radio calls of notable incidents. The department proactively embraced a citizen's right to record our officers from a safe distance, even prior to city and state laws codifying that right. Last year, we began allowing elected officials and other stakeholders access to our operations emails, which alert recipients in real time of notable incidents. Each precinct commander works to develop relationships and open lines of communication with the community stakeholders and the electeds in their precincts, and are often in communication with them in short order regarding incidents affecting their constituents. While this encryption will not impact, except in a positive way, is our ability to provide public safety. We have always coordinated with other public safety agencies and organizations such as the Fire Department, Homeless Services, Health and Hospitals, Seagate Police Department in South Brooklyn, as well as volunteer first responder organizations to facilitate direct access to our radio waves. We have not denied access to any public safety agency or organization who has requested access, and encryption will have no impact on our commitment to public safety in all forms. We have also heard the concerns expressed by the journalism community over encrypting our radios. The NYPD understands the vital importance responsible journalism has to keeping the public aware of safety concerns in their neighborhoods, and the department provides information to reporters many times a day, every day. We look forward to continuing the dialogue as to how this information landscape will take shape in light of the P25 digital implementation. And thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today, and I'm pleased to answer your questions.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Before I introduce Councilmember Brewer to talk about her bill, I just want to acknowledge Councilmember Palladino has joined us, Councilmember Schulman, and next we'll hear from Councilmember Brewer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My bill is not as controversial as your encryption, just so you know. So anyway, it's Intro 961-2023 creates an archive of official government social media accounts. This is a bill that has to do, and you'll hear later from the Municipal Library and the amazing Commissioner Pauline Toole, The bill aims to improve accountability and public engagement by enhancing transparency and public access to government social media posts. This is all about making sure that we have good archives in the city of New York. I'm a real archive fan. Doris now maintains a publicly accessible archive of official social media accounts of all New York City agencies. This legislation would mandate that Doris, which is also the municipal library, establish a publicly accessible and searchable online database of government social media accounts. It would apply to all city agencies as well as the official accounts of the mayor, the controller, public advocate, borough presidents, and members of the city council. Under this legislation, city agencies and elected officials would be required to annually report their official social media accounts to Doris. When I was previously city council, I found that many elected officials do not provide the information to the municipal library upon completing their term, and it means that the historians will not have this information. So I hope that this will meet the criteria of Pauline Toole. I know she'll have some testimony later and some tweaks that would make sense. Thank you very much. And again, encryption is more controversial. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Brewer. So we're going to get into a little bit of the first line of questioning. Thank you so much for your testimony. A lot of the information that I was going to ask was baked into your testimony, so we're just going to dig into some other pieces, if you don't mind. Okay. So first and foremost, just for the public and everyone for this hearing, we're just going to backtrack a little. What are the specific security concerns that prompted the decision for NYPD to encrypt the radio transmissions?
There's been a few security concerns throughout the years. First of all, just going back to 9/11, right? The ability to have interoperability and also to protect the city from terrorism, right? So this goes back, and so do I guess, back to that time period. But since I was a police officer back in 1986, there's been always problems with interlopers on the radio. So the biggest security problem we have is that the radio waves are in the clear, which means that people can monitor and people can modify existing equipment or buy radio equipment that can transmit on radio frequencies that are reserved and licensed by the police department. And that seems trivial at first thought, that someone can do that, but every transmission that blocks a possible emergency communication from a police officer who's responding to an incident, who's putting a perimeter up around an incident, who's trying to save a victim in a home invasion, all that information can be monitored by other people to be able to evade capture, and it could also be used by people looking to disrupt our communications by putting in calls at other locations to try to divert a police response. Simply they could just block us from communicating at all, keeping us from being able to respond to an incident in an organized and a safe way.
Thank you so much for that. I think what everybody wants to know is that, can you provide any concrete examples of incidents where encrypted radio communications were served as a security risk?
We have at least 60 documented incidents going back to 2022, but most noteworthy really is are incidents that occurred. Just to be more relevant, earlier this year, there was a burglary team that was out there. A very difficult burglary team to catch. It was a part of a citywide burglary pattern, and when finally apprehended, they did recover scanners in their possession. And going back a little bit further, in terms of my experience as a precinct commander, back in the 115th precinct in Jackson Heights, at one time my community was being really devastated by burglars. My community, the 109 precinct community, and again, deployment we had out there was very ineffective at being able to prevent and to be able to capture them. We were happy to get lucky on an occasion, and we got a call, and my people were right on the block, my burglary team, and we were able to apprehend them, and then we found them. They also had radio scanners in their possession. Also during the during the protests and some of the looting and rioting that occurred back in 2020. There was also a lot of information about our deployment and where the cops were going and where the cops were and where they weren't in terms of when we were being redeployed, which was being also reposted on social media. So I think part of the challenge that we face, that before we had to worry about a few professional criminals with some technical expertise to be able to access and try to disrupt our operations or evade our capture, but now that information can be rebroadcast over social media, and thousands of people could have that information at the same time. So those are a few examples, recent examples that we have, and some anecdotal cases.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. What would you say would be the number one reason that the NYPD transmissions have been compromised? Would you say that burglaries? Like, can you tell us what kind of incidences are that really prompted the use of encrypting the NYPD encrypting their radio transmissions, besides burglary?
Well, the reason for, first of all, there's two parts. I know that this hearing and a lot of the questions are going to be focused on encryption, but part of the problem is and why our system is so vulnerable is that as reliable as it was, is also very old. It's based the same technology that was being used, and I was transmitting, to Central back in 1986. For the most part, is the same analog technology that we're upgrading from, and there's no protection there in the analog world to be able to prevent other people from transmitting on our air. And what they're really doing is when first of all, it's illegal, right? The FCC licenses that, and it's only for police use. But really, it's the effect, the consequence of that utilization. When I graduated the police academy, they told me the most important piece of equipment that I have on my gun belt is my radio. And that's because that's the way we can summon help to an incident. And sometimes that's the only thing that can save our lives. Sometimes we're going to be outgunned. Sometimes we're not going to have, we're not going to have the advantage of surprise. Usually they have the advantage of surprise on us, but at least you can call for help. And if we can't make that call for help, and if someone can't receive that call for help, police officers' lives are in danger. And remember, usually we're in danger because we're responding to a victim's call and a vulnerable person's call for assistance through 911.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So, look, I'm a mom of 4. I depend on Citizens App. I depend on, my colleagues and I, we depend on having that second information when we need it. So, how do you plan on addressing the concerns that the media organizations, volunteer groups, and the public regarding the loss of access to real-time information?
So I definitely, I understand their concerns. I'm in communication with people that represent some of the media's issues here. Our plan is to have a method in which we can, and how we're going to do our radio operations, and who's going to be able to access those radio operations by the time we're completed. But I think the primary thing is really the safety issues here. We have to evaluate the effectiveness, and so far it's been effective in the precincts that we've upgraded in Brooklyn North and those zones. We're looking at what's happening around the country in terms of hundreds of police agencies that have gone encrypted, and what their experience is, and how that's impacting the media in those jurisdictions, because it doesn't appear that's the case in these other jurisdictions. So all that is part of our evaluation, and it's something that we consider. And I already mentioned before in my testimony that there's plenty of ways that we distribute and disseminate information about police incidents. And what wasn't in my testimony, we also have hundreds of digital media officers assigned to precincts that are also updating information on social media in real time. And if you look at the way you asked, like, how have we changed? How have we gone and what drove the change for us to do digital and encrypted? But likewise, I think the whole media landscape, how they're informed, how they get sources, how they get leads, also has changed, right? So I don't think there's a drastic impact. I think they're going to lose a source of leads, but by all means, the press that I know is very resourceful in finding out leads and being able to respond to locations. So we know their concerns. We understand it. We intend to address them before we complete our upgrade. But we also understand that our priority right now is public safety, protecting vulnerable residents of ours, and protecting police officers.
Thank you so much. I'll leave it to my colleague, Chair Gutierrez, to dig into the pilot and how that has transpired. So just a few more questions. Have you studied, and I think you touched on this a little bit, studied the experiences of other police departments in other jurisdictions and how they've implemented the radio encryption? Is there any lessons learned? Is there any challenges you foresee?
So far, I think our experience has been similar, at least in our, we won't call it a pilot, but our initial rollout of encryption. And I think that what we have seen is that some of the pressure, if there is pressure in these other jurisdictions, is more political than it is in terms of substantive issues with information dissemination to the press or to the public.
Thank you. Okay. So how will this encryption impact other first responders like fire department, volunteer groups, and community organizations that also respond to incidents in real time? And, how does NYPD Radio Communications plan to address and symbiotically speak with other first responders that have typically just overheard on your radio transmission?
I think you will find that the people that are really radio enthusiasts and radio professionals, they kind of like communicate together. So all those groups you talked about before, in terms of fire department, homeless services, Bed-Stuy, volunteer ambulance, volunteer private ambulance services, they're all in communications with our teams, and we've assisted them in getting access to our air. They could continue to provide those services. And by the way, those same people also respond to us and help us and help save our lives also, as well as the public.
So are you saying that fire and other first responders, EMS, will have access to this encryption? Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. And in the zone that we've upgraded to digital and where we've enabled encryption, that's already the case.
So is there any way that, are there any technological means you have to prevent hacking, unauthorized access to your encrypted radio channels?
Well, we're using a national standard, which is more or less the 256 EAS, which is the standard that all other police department and even the federal government in terms of encryption. I'm also responsible for the information security for the NYPD and the data that we collect and that we process. So we're going to take the same means and methods, penetration testing, everything that we do for data protection and and to protect against hacking, and all the tools that we have available, we can also apply, and we are applying to this system also.
Thank you. So what role will the public oversight play in the transparency of this encryption process? And how can they be, ensured? How can they be protected?
So I consider this part of the public oversight, right? So I think regularly we meet with our communities, with our precinct community councils, with our elected officials. We have calls with our state elected officials. Like I've already been invited to speak to the 100th Precinct Community Council, and I'm going to go and talk about the steps we're taking in terms of technology, including radio encryption. I've done public safety forums with the Deputy Mayor of Public Safety where I've answered questions, talked about encryption, and I've done press conferences also with the press previously, and also recently I went to Fordham University in Manhattan, talked about some technology, cyber-related technology, including radio encryption.
So yeah, I'm glad you said that because, all of these different precincts, we haven't gotten any of the rollout information. But how do you plan to roll this out citywide, and what's the timeline on that?
We have a timeline for to complete the project by December of next year. Part of this, in terms of what segments we're able to bring up, is a little bit difficult to gauge because we have to work with our telco providers to upgrade copper circuits to Ethernet and fiber optic circuits. So we expect to have all that work done, and most of it, if not all of it, done by December. But we don't have any firm timelines for any other specific patrol borough or radio zone.
So in your testimony, you said this project is a massive undertaking. It's projected to cost $390 million by the time it's completed, with approximately $190 million going to infrastructure and approximately $200 million to purchase and replace existing portable devices. This is all included, and that's going to be done by the end of 2024?
That's correct.
All right. Okay. So, moving on. Is it being considered to grant media outlets access to encrypted radio communications on a time-delayed basis, or on a is there some type of recording that is on file so people can access the radio transmissions for the public, or CCRB media public app? Yes.
So right now, we release 911 audio from call taker and some of our dispatch when required to the media under certain circumstances, and we're not changing the way we process requests for 911 calls. That's not going to change. That's not going to change at all. There was another part of your question?
And for the benefit of the public, can you talk about the timeline it's going to take you to provide these recordings to the public as a FOIL request? Is there a timeline that you can talk about? Does the media have to go through that timeline, are they going to have some sort of access? Because I think that's kind of like the point of the hearing is like, how are we, the public, going to be able to access and have this information in a timely manner?
Well, I can't speak to the FOIL request. I don't know if our legal representatives that are here. But the ability for us we get subpoenas on 911 calls all the time, and we turn those around very quickly, matter of days. So I don't think that it's a
I don't know.
One has to do. Well, I've gotten comments and thank yous from some people requesting them. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that will be another hearing when this is all, laid out by 2024. But I think that the concern is going to be the accessibility and the transparency to this. And that would lead me to my last question. How will the encryption process affect community engagement, especially in neighborhoods in high crime and neighborhoods of color? And how do you think this will affect that?
I think the effect is going to be very positive. It has been in Brooklyn North over these these precincts within Brooklyn North and the 5 zones that have been encrypted. Crime is drastically reduced, shooting drastically reduced in Brooklyn North. I think other people are testifying here from the audience. So I think that is at least contributing to it. There's a lot of community partnership going on also. I know in Queens South, I worked hand in hand with the violence interrupters, and part of that was involving them in real-time communications with us in terms of what was happening over that weekend. And I'm sure that those people that worked at Queens South could testify about how available and how timely we were in communicating with them regarding shooting incidents and possible violence that was going to occur or shootings in those communities.
Thank you. And sorry, one final question. Have you put together a plan to evaluate the impact of radio encryption and reporting to see, is there a breakdown, news to the public? How is it working? is there any plans to have some sort of reporting or evaluation after this has been launched citywide?
Part of our evaluation, and we do intend to do that and complete that evaluation before recommending policy and what the methods of access are going to be. But that also includes, like I said before, it includes evaluation of our implementation, what's going on really throughout the country, and I'm also evaluating from an information security perspective the data that's being communicated over the radio, and right now that it can be monitored and captured by people with scanners, includes people on victims, right? I said before that a lot of this information is subpoenaed, right, for court cases. That information is being publicly right now, it's publicly accessible, and to me is a risk, for, as a person who lives in this community, if someone in my household was a victim of a sex offense, I don't necessarily want people to know that's what happened in my house when the police came, right? But right now, that's information that's available if you're monitoring those police frequencies. So we see that data. That data possibly can be, it's definitely personal identifying information, right? That goes over that radio. Sometimes the results of our NCIC checks go over that, and that's CJIS information, and that's required to be encrypted. So those are all kind of things that we have to evaluate and look at how this landscape is changing and how important is it for us to protect this information from our victims, vulnerable people, and to keep police officers safe.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I'm now going to recognize our public advocate, Mr. Jabani Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As mentioned, my name is Jabani Williams, and I'm a public advocate for the City of New York. I want to thank Chair Gutierrez, Chair Ong, Chair Hanks, and the committee member for holding this hearing. This is actually an opening statement, so some of it may have been addressed, or it's opening a little late. It is important that the New York Police Department is able to conduct ongoing investigations safely and responsibly. As a council, I'm glad the council must do everything in its power to assist the NYPD so that there are no interferences into ongoing investigations. With that said, we must also balance the need for public safety with the need for transparency. This past summer, the NYPD introduced a $500 million radio system that encrypts radio communications, a project which will take 5 years to complete, although several frequencies have already been encrypted. The NYPD, in my opinion, has a long history of pushing back on oversight and accountability, which makes this move particularly concerning. As of November 20th, 2023, there are 10 precincts using encrypted channels without any accommodations for the press. This hurts the ability for journalists to research criminal cases and conduct a proper journalistic review, which has led to evidence that exonerates formerly incarcerated individuals. The NYPD argues that there will be an accreditation process for journalists at some point. The issue still remains that if police radios are encrypted, the unaccredited journalists will need to submit FOIA requests just to hear deciphered transcriptions of the radio. The City of New York already struggles to answer FOIA requests in a timely manner. That might be different than subpoenas, but regular FOIA requests, as some requests take years to process. Again, the NYPD in particular has a difficulty when responding to requests for records and body-worn camera footage, taking months or even years to fulfill the request. Sometimes folks haven't received it at all. I would like to know if there's been an uptick in interruptions or threats that haven't existed with the previous technology. My guess is there've always been this kind of threats that were these kind of threats have always existed. What's changed specifically now, not just technology, but has actually something happened. There are also civic reasons to keep the radios available to the public as well. Cab drivers listen to police radio because they want to avoid active police or EMT events on the road. Additionally, some local crimes are recorded over police radio that do not get media attention, and it's valuable to have a live report about the crime. While there are some issues around civilian community patrols, there are those that utilize the police radio to help assist NYPD. There are instances where community patrol groups have stopped active crime from occurring before the police arrives because of open police radio. Additionally, access to police radio transmissions provides helpful information for protesters, allowing them to avoid some of the over-policing that has occurred and arbitrary arrests. Further, during the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests, individuals monitoring heard officers policing protests make unacceptable comments, including telling each other to shoot those MFers and run them over. Furthermore, there may be alternatives to mass encryption. During an active SWAT raid or for certain EMT situations that may lead to HIPAA violations, some municipalities require that radios are switched to a different communication channel. Also, and lastly, when there is a sensitive coordination point between police units, then there might be an option for encrypted channels that can be used. But in cases, a main channel should be used. The NYPD can use the latest technology to protect officers and simultaneously protect the freedom of the press. It should not be all or nothing. My hope is that through this hearing, we can understand if there is a potential to do some of what I just requested. I am concerned with the administration. When it comes around law enforcement, whether it's Rikers or NYPD, there seems to be a push toward less transparency that we then have to push back for as opposed to more. So hopefully we can get some answers from this hearing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Public Advocate. And before I begin questions, I want to ask if we have any other, I know we have other agencies here, just want to make sure if you have testimonies to read. Okay, so we'd like to start with Doris. Yes. Thank you so much for being here, by the way. Please just make sure it's read.
Good afternoon. My name is Pauline Toole, and I am the Commissioner of the New York City Department of Records and Information Services, known as DORIS. Thank you, Chairs Ung, Gutierrez, and Hanks, and the members of the Committee on Government Operations, Technology, and Public Safety for the opportunity to testify before you today on the proposed local law to add elected officials' social media posts to government social media content maintained by DORIS. This administration is committed to ensuring that government is open, accessible, and transparent so that residents of New York City can engage with city government in a meaningful way. Providing access to government records helps accomplish that goal. Intro 961 would amend the city charter to require that DORIS maintain a publicly accessible and searchable online database of the official social media posts and websites of government officials, and require the city's elected officials and agencies to provide DORIS with a list of each official social media account annually. DORIS appreciates the Council's focus on gathering and making available all city government social media posts. We have one suggestion to improve compliance, which is to require the account holder and contact information be provided. The charter gives DORIS 3 responsibilities related to the city's records. The municipal archives accessions, preserves, and makes available city government's historical records, which are the unpublished records by and large of government agencies and officials. The municipal library preserves and makes available the published records of city government. And the Records Division sets record retention policies and works with agencies and government officials to modernize the management of their records in all formats. Social media posts and websites are official government records as defined by the city charter. In 2017, DORIS published a policy making the retention period for these records permanent. Because they are published, their long-term retention is in the municipal library collection and not the municipal archives. We recognize the challenge for agencies to transfer every post to the municipal library collection, and we worked with the law department and city government's technology leaders to identify and engage a vendor to harvest all official social media posts from government offices. At that time, a separate vendor also gathered content from government websites. Both types of records document the business of city government and will be invaluable resources for future researchers. Currently, there are 28,722,188 posts available in a searchable public database. The site is constantly updated by the vendor, Civic Plus, formerly known as Archive Social. Content is pulled from Twitter, now known as X, Facebook, Instagram, Flickr, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Vimeo, YouTube, and briefly from TikTok. Even though this harvesting began officially in 2017, the algorithm searches for all posts associated with an account dating to its inception. So as a result, some social media posts available on the site date back to 2002, which is, it seems, when city government started using social media. For this reason, the requirement that officials provide Doris with an annual list of accounts suffices because the application will crawl for content created using the various social media platforms. In our experience, the most challenging aspect of preserving these government records is locating the correct point of contact in an office, which frequently requires a little detective work. Sorry, Chief. The list of accounts alone will not allow Doris to preserve that material. The name of a designated person who has access to the login credentials must be provided. It would be extremely helpful to require that the offices and elected officials provide the name and email address of the account holder, the platform name, the name of the account, and if the account holder does not manage the social media, the name of the person designated to manage the content. Finally, we would like to clarify that our system, providing a link to the online database of city government social media or its successor on our agency website, meets the intent of the bill, which requires that Doris maintain a publicly accessible and searchable online database that contains all publicly viewable content and metadata shared by an official government social media account. Finally, we commend the City Council for its focus on records retention and preservation and would be happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you. And next we'll ask for testimony from Mom.
Hi, good afternoon, Chairs Gutierrez, Hanks, and Ung, and members of the New York City Council Committees on Technology, Public Safety, and Government Operations. My name is Summer Nasser. I'm the Executive Director of the Press Credentials Office with the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment. I'm joined today with by MOM Senior Counsel Stas Scarbo. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on this important conversation on media transparency. Journalism plays a critical role in maintaining a healthy democracy, and the administration unequivocally supports the freedom of press to do their work. The press provides information that educates, informs, and encourages civic engagement. The ability of New Yorkers to express informed opinions depends on their access to objective information about what's happening in their community and beyond. PCO's mission is to provide members of the press with a timely, transparent, and equitable press card application process. Prior to joining MOM, I spent over 2 decades working as a journalist right here in New York City. At MOM, I leverage my experience in understanding the needs and challenges of news gathering to fully serve and support members of the press to exercise their First Amendment rights and to inform the public. For me, this is a professional and personal responsibility. For over a century, the city has been providing qualified journalists with press credentials that allow members to pass police and fire lines and similar barriers, as well as attend city government press conferences and other city-sponsored events open to the press. To be clear, a press card is not a license, nor is it required to work as a journalist in New York City. It merely allows access to certain areas that would otherwise be restricted to the public for the purpose of news gathering and informing the public. Today, this key duty is MOM's responsibility. In 2021, City Council passed Local Law 46, which transferred the function of issuing press credentials from NYPD to MOM. Local Law 46 also made the following changes. It requires a hearing at the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings, also known as OATH, prior to any suspension or revocation of a press card. It also provides a press card applicant with the opportunity to appeal a denial of a press card application, also in front of OATH, and it requires MOM to offer at least 3 types of press cards, including the reserve, standard, and the single event press card. In addition, Local Law 46 requires rulemaking. As of January 20th, 2022, the PCO assumed responsibility for issuing press cards. Soon after, MOM issued regulations covering press credentials after a public hearing at which members of the press and First Amendment attorneys provided feedback on the proposed regulations. The PCO is proud of the service it provides to journalists. Since assuming this key function, we work on ensuring the application process is as smooth as possible and that language barriers and other obstacles have been removed. Our biggest accomplishment is the digitization of the press credential application process. PCO developed an online portal for both application submissions and application assessments. Everything related to press credentialing is centralized on a seamless and user-friendly portal that's accessible from anywhere with internet access. Applicants may apply, appeal, renew, and report a press card stolen or lost online anytime. The PCO is also written in plain language and offers detailed information and video tutorials to help journalists navigate the new press credentialing portal. To better serve and ensure accessibility for our limited English proficient constituents, the PCO provides materials in multiple languages. Our portal is also available in all 10 citywide languages, and journalists may submit media files in any language. To better assist our ethnic and community news outlets here in New York City, the PCO works with the Center of Community Media at CUNY, Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism, which offers free workshops to the New York City's ethnic and community media group members. To date, the PCO has received approximately 3,500 applications and has approved about 70%. Our staff prides itself on being available to guide members of the press on how to obtain a press card in accordance with MOME's rules. Our customer service survey provided excellent feedback. 92% of applicants awarded the PCO 4- and 5-star ratings, describing it as very well organized, fast, and efficient. 80% of applicants believe that the new process is better. These numbers illustrate PCO's commitment to facilitating the critical work that journalists do each and every day to keep our public informed, and we hope to continue doing this great work. Thank you for the opportunity to testify about the public service we offer to New York City journalists. We look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Chair Gutierrez. We can hear from some of our colleagues who have questions. Okay.
I have questions. Can I go? Sorry, I'm confused. I'll be fast because I know folks have been waiting for a while, and then that'll be my way to keep you all here longer. Is I'll go and then we'll go to members. So let me just make sure I have your title, Chief. Can you just and I know you answered this, but I'm still a little bit, because I think there have been commitments from a previous administration and even Commissioner Caban on the willingness to establish a system for even under encrypted radio communications to allow the press. And I know we've seen it happen in other cities where there is delay, like Baltimore, Chicago, and other cities which I know are not as large, but I would say comparable as far as, what the PD is expressing is a level of concerns and threat. So can you just one more time, or just expand a little bit? I'm unclear. Why not? What are we thinking?
Well, what we're thinking is that it needs to be explored, like I said before, because we need to consider everything into the equation, right? So things have changed in the country, right, in terms of police communications. We're not the first ones to do this. Hundreds of police departments in the country have gone fully encrypted. We've gone encrypted in some channels. Look at our experience there, and look to see in terms of to make sure that if we're going to make those commitments, that we have a legal position to stand on in terms of, is this CJIS data? Is this private personal information? So I think we're looking at all of them. I think what the PC said and what I said are very consistent. We're looking at the whole situation, the different methods that are available to allow access to radio communications, and we're going to make a decision on that before we complete our rollout.
Sure, but even you said we're not the first, and other cities that have started this before us have already gotten to, I think, what some folks would like to see the PD exhibit, which is, yes, allowing for access for the media with a delayed response, if that is what other cities are doing. So for me, it just, what more are you looking into if there is already a precedent?
Yeah, I think I just mentioned all of them, so I just, in the sense of not repeating them, is just what I just said. Those are the three areas that we're looking at. It's the experience of.
I mean, you can repeat it.
the
It just,
country.
I don't agree. It feels really incomplete. It feels like you are, like the agency is stalling. Like the agency is like, I mean, in your testimony, I found it comical for you to say the PD is famously known for its transparency. I would love for you to point that out to me when that's happened. And we know that in the instances here, oftentimes it is the media that has provided that level of transparency for which the PD has been unable and unwilling to do. So you can repeat it, but it doesn't change that there is precedent. And, you know, I think it's a stall tactic. I don't think it's reflective of the values that you say that you had in your testimony. But I will certainly allow for the public testimony to expand on that. Can I ask on the pilot of the precincts in Brooklyn North, what was the thought behind starting there?
The thought behind that had to do more with some of the crime issues that we were experiencing throughout the city.
They were specific to encryption?
They're going to mention, well, I'm going to show you how encryption helped play a role in addressing them. But we had crime conditions that involved organized robbery crews, right? Going around and robbing smoke shops. We had carjackings going on and robbing multiple people, multiple victimization, and going to different boroughs. So one of the recommendations that we came up with as part of what technology tools do we have available that can help reduce crime and reduce victimization that we were working on, one of them was the digital upgrade and the encryption. Even though we're not ready to go citywide, we were capable of upgrading the systems in Brooklyn North. We did so first by doing our citywide channel, our citywide 4. That citywide 4 assisted us early on after activating that, I believe early in the summer or late in the spring, of catching a robbery crew that was victimizing many of these smoke shops, but we couldn't catch them. And again, we were able to finally catch them once we went encrypted, and we also did recover, find out that they were also using scanning equipment to evade apprehension. So that was the basis. Hey, it worked there for Citywide 1. Where else can we apply it so we can protect people, respond to these incidents, and to be able to really stop giving the bad guys our game plan in terms of how we're trying to apprehend them.
Okay. And are there any other examples in Brooklyn North that you can share? I guess I just want to create a scenario
The
where
problems weren't specific to Brooklyn North.
But I just mean because you piloted it there,
Citywide.
so
Brooklyn North
and I
is-
represent it, so I'm like,
was selected because that was the area that we had the least amount of work to do to fully complete the upgrade for those boroughs geographically. We were focusing. We have to focus.
do you mean like the fiber
Yeah,
installation?
so the fiber upgrades, we got to work with Verizon to do that. So we asked Verizon to prioritize so we can at least finish one area, and that's where we started. Really was Brooklyn.
And what does that look like? I guess in communities that have a long way to go in the fiber installation.
It's probably easier in some communities. I think Staten Island, it's a little bit easier.
And it's just Verizon that's responsible.
No, it's Verizon. Verizon has to come in, complete the circuit, and upgrade that circuit from copper to Ethernet, and to bring fiber optic communications to that site. We have to deal with the site owners because these are usually properties that aren't owned by us.
Right.
So we have to coordinate and facilitate agreements with those property owners to utilize their buildings, and usually we upgrade and renew memorandums of understandings that we have with the building owners, and then we have to install the UP25 digital equipment and test it before we can later on activate it and to be able to communicate, and then we take the older equipment offline, the analog equipment.
Okay. And I'm going to just jump back one question. The exploration phase that the agency is in, of like figuring out a system, how long, because I mean it was said by the previous commissioner, actually 2 commissioners ago, and I know at a recent press conference that the mayor had, I think they brought it up again. So what is the, I think we want to believe that there is an urgency, because we do believe in the value of allowing access, but what is the for real timeline that we're thinking, that you are all thinking about?
Timeline was, and it's consistent. Since I've been here, the timeline has been before the completion of the digital
Which is
upgrade,
supposed to be for next year.
before the end of next year, 2024. Correct.
Okay. And then my last question for you, Chief, is I believe this was in your testimony, the special key to secure the P25 digital system. Is it a for real key? I think if you can just, because I think what we also want to understand is is this transition actually more secure, and how much can you share about the security of said key?
It's a 256-bit encryption key, so that's really just a sequence of numbers that's proven very difficult and impossible for other people to be able to break right now. But that's more or less the way that the system, somebody's radio can decode the message that's going out. They need the key to decode the message that's currently encrypted.
Okay, thank you. I just have a couple questions for the commissioner. Commissioner, thank you so much for being here. It's for you. No, I apologize.
I'm actually the executive director.
The executive director, I apologize. Thank you for your testimony. And I caught at the end of it that you shared about 70% of the applications are being approved. Do you have a sense of when the transfer was made, what was the rate that PD was denying or approving credentials versus what MOM has been doing since it transferred over?
I do not have that.
Chief, do you have that?
No, I don't.
No, you guys shut it down and you were like,
No, I'm
we're
not.
done.
I don't. Technology doesn't do DCPI, so.
All right. And in the instances where they are being denied, can you share anything about what are some of the things that you are all looking for and why they're being denied?
Absolutely. So let's start off by saying thank you for the question. Our rules, our application process is based on law. So Law 46 required MOM to create a set of criteria for applications, for suspensions, for revocations. For applications, there are several reasons a person can be denied, and it really just depends on whether or not they provide us with the requirements of the application. The requirements of the application, other than some personal identifying information, include the applicant is required to submit 6 pieces of media, and they have to be very specific pieces of media. They have to be they're defined as covered events. So these are events where these are emergency events and non-emergency events that happen on public space that also require some city official restriction. For instance, a metal barricade by NYPD, or crowd preservation because there's a fire by fire police or fire officials. It also entitles. The events also has to fall in. Can also fall into a city-sponsored event. So there are 3 buckets: breaking news, non-emergency on public space with barricades in both of those incidents, and attending city-sponsored events that are open to the press, for example, a press conference. So if they give us the requirements, we approve them.
And how often are they having to reapply for a press pass? And are those credentials still equally applied while they're seeking to renew that?
Can you repeat the last part of the question?
I guess how often do folks have to reapply for, or do they have one for life? And if that's the case, where they are reapplying, are you utilizing the same are you using the same credentials, or are you just kind of renewing it because they've already had one?
Gotcha. So each card is valid for 2 years. It expires January 15th of every odd year. So when renewals come up, we're actually coming up to a renewal season for 25. They will need to submit a brand new application with the same requirements.
Thank you. And then I just have one question for Commissioner Toole. Can you expand a little bit on, I know on specifically Councilmember Brewer's bill, that I know that there's some hesitation on the level of just like capacity. Is that what I understood from your testimony, or is the agency in support of the bill?
We support the bill.
You support the bill?
Right.
Okay, wonderful. Wonderful. I'm sorry, then I
It's not a
misheard.
capacity issue. It's just the elected officials giving us their information so we can harvest, right? Mandated or not, we could do it.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. I think that's it. That's it for me for questions.
Yes, thank you. And my questions are for Commissioner O'Toole. I just have a quick few follow-up questions about the archives. How is the public able to access the archives right now?
The public can, do you mean the social media archive or
yes.
the archives in general?
The social media archives.
We have a URL. They can go to, I think it's nyc.gov at .archivesocial.com, and they can browse all 18 million.
Excellent. And how, I'm trying to understand the process a little bit better. How is it you get the social medias of the elected officials right now? Do we affirmatively give it to you, or do you ask us for it and then we give it to you?
So every agency, every official should have a record retention schedule that describes their records and how long they're retained. In the instance of social media, we get from offices the name of their social media platform and the account name and the account holder's information. We provide that to our vendor. The vendor has developed its own technology to interact with the APIs for all these different social media platforms and gather the content. So if, council member, you had a social media account and you provided us with that information, we would provide it to our vendor and they would start harvesting all of your official social content immediately.
So what if I don't provide you with that account? So right now it's a...
Well, we wouldn't, how would we know, right?
Right, so it's a voluntarily just giving the information over.
Right, I think, yes, but it is this policy, the records policy of the city is that these are official records and they should be retained because the charter requires that. So while there is an element of volunteerism, one would imagine there would be some compliance.
Great. And just one last question about Councilmember Brewer's bill. Other than the challenge, you were saying that about having a correct point of contact. I see that. Is there any other challenges to this bill? I know you're generally in agreement with it, but is there any other challenges to this bill?
No. We just, once we have the information, we'll give it to the harvester. They do the work and it's out there for the public to see. And most importantly, 50 years from now, it's where people are going to find a record of the work that has been accomplished.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm done with my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair Ong. I'd like to recognize Councilmember Bottcher, who's joined us. I just have a few questions regarding, I want to circle back to the delay. I kind of feel fuzzy about the delay. Do we have a concrete answer on how that's going to happen, whether there is going to be a delay, or if there's not going to be a delay for press that have the credentials or the encryption key to listen in to the encrypting?
We haven't made that decision.
You got to put your microphone on so he can hear you.
I had it on before, yes. I had it on too long, but we haven't made that decision yet. That's all under evaluation and consideration.
Okay. Do you know when you're going to be able to have the decision on, like, what would influence your decision? Can you just kind of elaborate a little bit? I think that's what folks want to kind of understand. How long is the encryption encrypted?
It's going to be based on the experience of other cities, the experience that we have on our encrypted channels, and also the considerations for data security and CJIS and FCC compliance.
Do you foresee us, the public, knowing what that delay will be prior to the release, the launch in 2024?
Sure. Once we make a decision, that will be made public.
One more for NYPD. Will there be any downtime while they're going to the conversion? Will each precinct, is there any kind of delay or downtime when they do from the old to the new?
No, we actually, a lot of the work that we do is to ensure we're kind of running parallel systems at the same time while we're testing. And even when we upgraded to Brooklyn North, we kept both of them active, both channels, both the clear and the encrypted active for a significant period of time to ensure that people that were on vacation got their radios switched or reprogrammed, that we put notices out there to inform people of the changes that we were making and what they needed to do. And so we go through a real painstaking process of step by step to make sure that we're not going to leave a police officer out there with a radio that's monitoring an open channel or clear channel while we're operating and encrypted.
Is there any plans to have, I know that you testified that you'll be going, that you do talks and kind of update. So are you going to, is there going to be a precinct by precinct, this is going to be the new system for the police councils, for the community boards, for the CMS workers? Will there be any kind of tutorial or this is happening and this is what it means precinct by precinct?
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, as a borough commander of Queens South, and same thing on Staten Island. I'm a Staten Island resident now. We communicate with the public, with the elected officials. So we'll make sure we keep everyone informed in that process in terms of changes that are happening.
Welcome to the Rock. How do you foresee the crisis management workers, cure violence workers working in this space? Have you thought about it, of how CMS workers will, not that they ever had access, but will there be any change or anything with our crisis management and cure violence workers?
Well, I mean, I have a broader team, but that really wasn't on my radar until I read it in the I believe it was in the Times. And the reason why it wasn't is because I worked with the cure violence people, and we had real-time communications with them and chat groups and everything else. So maybe those issues never really. And by the way, Erica Ford has my number, right? So, and she hasn't been calling me. So I'm assuming we're in a good place. But it's good to know that's one of the considerations we should be looking at in terms of community partners, right? So.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the community part, there's the media aspect of it, but there's also the community partner aspect of it as well. And I think that I look forward to kind of hearing and digging a little deeper in how that partnership will look like. Thank you so much. My next question is for Mom. Okay. So I don't know if this was what's gone over. Thank you so much. Is there any reason why we would deny applications, and does MOM conduct criminal background checks for press credentials, although not explicitly authorized by local law 46?
So all applications are reviewed according to the same set of standards that are prescribed by the MOM rules. The MOM rules set forth procedures and certain criteria by which we would analyze the application. As I mentioned before, if the requirements that we request are submitted as requested, then that person would be awarded or approved for a press card. In terms of criminal background, our application does include 3 criminal history background questions, and our office has the discretion to conduct a background check if necessary.
For the purpose of the public, regarding the rule on criminal records, specifically arrests with misdemeanors while news gathering, what was the justification behind including such a question in the application process?
think MOM Senior Counsel Stas Scarbo can better answer that question for you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stas Scarbo. I'm a senior counsel at the Press Credentials Office of Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment. And would you please repeat the question?
So we were just kind of talking about, the criminal background checks for press credentials, but you testified that there are questions on the application that speak to that. So my question is, as part of the application, an applicant, sorry, I apologize, I just crossed it out, as regarding the rule on criminal records, specifically arrests for misdemeanors while news gathering, what was the justification for including these questions as part of the application process?
I do not have that information right now. I would be able to get back to you after the hearing.
I would like to know that. Thank you. So, as part of the application, the applicant must submit 6 publications that they have authored in the past 24 months. Why was this a specific requirement, and why require 6 publications instead of 10 or 2?
It's a great question. We adopted the same criteria as NYPD's criteria, essentially. Applicants may submit 6. They're not limited to 6. They can submit more if they'd like, increase their chances. But we do require 6 at minimum.
So this is a question for the newly graduated, people in the public who are aspiring journalists. And so does this requirement account for newly graduated journalists who may not meet this requirement?
Absolutely. We have different pathways. One pathway would be for them to use a reserve press card that's issued to their employer. They can go to their assignment desk and say, hey, can I borrow a reserve card for this assignment? And they can go and cover their story. Or this also applies for not just graduates, but folks who are coming from out of state who may not have the New York media requirement. They may take the single event pathway, in which they would, it's a 2-step process, they would submit an application, and it's called a single event pre-registration. That would give, if they get approved, then they would have the ability to cover as many single events as they would like within a 2-year period. For each event they would like to cover, they have to then take a second step, which is the second step of the process, and apply for the actual event. And that event needs to be a covered event as we define it. Again, that is emergency and non-emergency public events that are newsworthy, as well as city-sponsored events open to the press.
Thank you so much for answering my questions. I'm going to pass it on to my colleagues, the public advocate. He has questions. We'll start with him first. And I would like to recognize Councilmember Mealy has joined us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just quickly for Edie Mom, I wanted to understand how that works for social media. You may have said it and I missed it, but social media journalists, they have the same publication requirements?
Yes. Digital Landscape is considered to be a publication, as is print and broadcast and cablecast.
So it has nothing to do with how many followers or anything like this. It's all about
Absolutely
publication?
not. It's about publication.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And for PD, I just wanted to better understand, were there safety issues before this change? Were there safety issues of people getting information from radio scans?
Yeah, I think that's a part of the question that I didn't answer before for someone. So I think the issue's always been there. I think it was, for many years, we would just switch people over the frequency to another frequency, but they start following us to those other frequencies, and it was something that we didn't really have a solution for, because the equipment to be able to track and the length of the transmissions and the frequency of the transmissions to track an unidentified radio device, it's a very futile effort to try to identify where it was. So I think the things that really changed is, number one, the capabilities of the technology to be able to make sure that our transmissions are more or less encoded and encrypted, so they don't become available. I think that's probably the biggest change, is the capability, and also the evolution of social media and its impact on. Before, we just had to worry about a trained, skilled adversary, but that skilled adversary could be working for a group or a criminal group, and that information could become available to hundreds, if not thousands, of users.
So I get that, and I want to make sure police can do their job safely and effectively. So I don't want it to be unnecessarily impeded. I'm also thinking about the ability to have transparency. So I'm trying to figure out if there an increase in threats that occurred because of social media, or is this anticipatory? I'm trying to figure out what else besides.
Definitely increases in 2016.
Okay.
Increase in numbers of threats. As a matter of fact, there was a male, Jay Peralta, that was arrested and also charged by the FCC for making multiple threats, disruptions, and so
I'm sorry.
forth.
Was it threats based on information that they got from the radio scans?
Yes, they were transmitting on police department radio.
Oh, so they were transmitting themselves.
Right, they were monitoring and transmitting.
Okay.
And that was 6 incidents, and matter of fact, the media reported on it back then because it was going on frequently and again over an elongated period, and also the threats were targeted towards a specific captain or member of the police department. So I think that was one, and just our whole experience during the protests, which were less of an issue, but some of the looting and rioting and crime that occurred, also social media and the radio, our radio operations, our operations that were transmitted over the radio were being put over social media. As a matter of fact, also around that time, there was also publications on social media, on the internet, on hacker sites, on how to circumvent and disrupt NYPD communications.
And then, like I mentioned, during some SWAT raids or certain EMT situations that lead to a HIPAA violation, some municipalities can switch at that point to different forms of communication. So is that something the NYPD can do as opposed to switching the whole thing all the time?
At first glance, again, to the uninitiated, that sounds like a good idea. We just talked about 6.8 million jobs. We talked about, unlike these other police departments that maybe just have a handful of police officers, tens of thousands of police officers, thousands of call takers and dispatchers that would have to make decisions on a transmission of whether or not it's going to require to be encrypted. Then we have to get everyone on the channel to change, because if they don't and they call for help, no one's going to hear them.
All right. My last question. It's being done, so I'm going to put a pin in that. I understand what you're saying, but this I can't go further. The other part is, so that it concerns the public at large. Do you have the same concern with press?
I think the issues with press, would be more right now in terms of, would be more the security, personal identifying information, and CJIS.
Well, that existed before.
CJIS compliance.
That all existed before.
But as we upgraded, as we're upgrading this, our system, and as CJIS changes their requirements for security, I believe this information, this data, comes under the purview of that requirement for encryption. So, but we need to look at it. And I think, I'm not a lawyer, so we need lawyers.
So I understand some of the concerns with the public that I still want to kind of digest. But the press, I don't fully understand why we would want to exclude them the way that we are. So I just have concerns. I'm also concerned that some of it is, there are some things that have been heard that I think didn't make the NYPD look the best, and so I'm concerned that is part of the consideration. So I'm trying to figure out what is the biggest reasons we're moving forward. So thank you for letting me know about the increase in threats that have happened in 2016. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Public Advocate. Next, we'll hear from Councilmember Holden.
Thank you. Thank you all for your testimony. Thank you, Chief. Nice seeing you again.
Good seeing you, sir.
As somebody who, as a civic leader for years, decades actually, I listened to the police scanner. And I discovered a lot of things on it, though. I discovered how many units were out there. I discovered how many jobs they're holding. Most of them were holding 5 jobs in my precinct, which is, I think, is the limit, even though that's too much. I discovered many times if they went into backlog. I discovered, which I wouldn't have found out ordinarily, if they went into alert. And I would find out how busy they are. So I could see how in the wrong hands, if a crook can tell how many units are out working that night, and sometimes there's only 3 in my very large precinct, it's a problem. And so you said that some of the bad guys were listening to your conversations sometimes, right? Was that quite often, or is it a certain percentage that you have of how many people you caught with the scanner who were up to no good?
Well, that's one thing that we can't tell in a clear channel is.
No, if they
how
were
many
arrested,
people-
they might have the
How
portable.
many people are monitoring? But my experience, I've been involved with many arrests throughout my career where we caught career criminals with scanners.
And it was mostly for what I understood, burglary, because they would know if a unit has been called.
Burglaries. If you're a professional robber and you're robbing a bank, you're robbing a drug dealer. What's most common is, and you've probably heard about this in some of your complaints and updates to crime, is criminal police impersonators. They notoriously carry police radios all the time, or scanners that look like police radios, I should say.
Right. I know the scanner I had, I couldn't transmit, though. I couldn't break in. I mean, they figured that out, to break into police.
Well, some people who have radio knowledge.
I could only listen in.
Yes, right,
So
right.
like Citizen does.
Right.
Citizen, you listen in.
Right.
But
once you know the channel, know certain information about where we're transmitting, if you have access to a radio transmitter, you can transmit on that.
And you know the codes also. But
Correct.
does the technology exist where the press could have a license and a number that they could track, that you can actually track how many, what the organization, how many licenses they have, were they on that, does that technology exist today?
The technology exists so we can know who's transmitting. I'm not sure if that same technology can track who's listening. Yeah.
So we don't know that. And you said other cities have done this. Do they have certain restrictions, or they have press access? Do they allow that? That you said Chicago? I think you said Chicago. Or
Right. Chicago's one of them. I think some of them are considering delayed transmission. Some are not retransmitting at all. Nassau's not retransmitting. So different people have. Most of them that we saw are not doing retransmitting. They're transmitting and encrypted without retransmitting.
right, but are there any restrictions, or do they allow the press to have it? Let's say, and only the press, where they don't allow other groups to have it, other than emergency access.
Yeah. My information is known. That's not that most of those jurisdictions are not allowing a carve out for press.
All right, so there's no, but you could see how the transparency, people would question that, because I discovered a lot about my precinct that like I said, I would use that, go to civic meetings and say, you know what, we have 3 units out and it's ridiculous. Or I can see how, that police can circle the wagons and we're headed in that direction, by the way, because we're going to have 28,000, whatever it is, police officers, the lowest that I could remember. We did go through a period in the 70s where we couldn't even answer 911 calls. We did have that bad period, and crime was very, very high. So I'm just wondering, in the precincts that you started this, or in Brooklyn North, has there been a reduction in crime?
Yes.
And only in North or South too? Because I think South has a reduction.
I haven't been
too.
to.
About the same.
I haven't seen the Brooklyn South comp stat.
No, I did, and it's the same. It's the same. So it's like, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It depends on how many of the bad guys. And by the way, if you're caught with a radio, one of those portable radios, meaning you're caught with a scanner, were you? Is that against the law?
Not unless you're committing a crime, no.
So you can ride around with a scanner in your car and not be press.
That's correct.
Okay, because I was always, I was told that you had to. I mean, years ago. This is 30 years ago, but I was told that if you got caught with one and you weren't pressed, that you can get in trouble, but you can't, you're saying. So,
That's correct.
okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much, Councilmember Holden. One quick question, circling back to what Councilmember Holden said. How does this affect, even if it's an application like a Citizens app, like, again, as a parent, you look on that and, you're petrified, but at least you know, oh my God, So is there going to be a carve out for legitimate people who have, apps that kind of do that service?
We do know that they currently, those services currently scan our radio channels, so we are considering that. We haven't decided a carve out for anyone yet because of the reasons I expressed before, but we're definitely considering it. We understand it. I spoke to Simca Weissman, the 102 Precinct Community Council president, after the announcement on encryption. So I understand that certain community people, definitely elected officials, have that concern, and that's definitely part of our consideration.
Yes, I would hope that would be a consideration, especially as an elected official. I mean, we very much need that kind of information, and we appreciate it. So next we'll hear from Councilmember Joseph.
Yes, thank you, chairs. My question is, what steps is the NYPD taking to balance the need for operational security with the right to public information, transparency, especially regarding radio encryption?
Well, I think I mentioned before different ways that NYPD demonstrates its transparency, and a lot of that has to do both locally from precinct commanders and how they communicate to their community partners in each sector, to the precinct community council president and their board, to their elected officials. There's real-time communication on incidents, and I know it because when it doesn't happen, I used to get the calls as a borough commander. That's a channel of information that's going to continue, and each of those precincts have digital media officers that are also posting information and updates to police incidents.
Does that
as they're
also
occurring.
apply to your voluntary ambulance and your fire departments as well? Do they have access to their?
That's all open to the public.
It's all open to the public?
And also, in addition to that, operations in the last few years also is sharing information on real-time incidents that we send out to police executives on incidents as they're occurring. And that's to state elected officials and city elected officials also. And we have our DCPI, we have a whole office that deals our relationships with the press and informing the press. And I get requests at least a couple days a week from the press through DCPI asking for information, and we supply it.
And do you provide updated information to journalists about changes in NYPD policies related to press access, and what mechanisms are in place to address concerns or disputes?
Are we talking about radio access or talking about just access to crime
Information,
scenes?
right.
Information. So, yeah, I really don't have the answer to that question. So.
I hope you can email me back the answer.
We'll get someone to email you back.
All right. In terms of government social media archiving, what policies and procedures are in place to ensure transparency, accountability, accessibility of archived contents?
Whatever is posted by the official account is harvested and made available.
How do they have access to it? Does the general public have access to it?
Yes.
How would they access that?
There's a website at Archive Social that's focused solely on New York City government official social media. It has, I think, 28 million posts. It's all there.
And thank you. So what efforts are also being made to educate both media and public about the reasons behind the encryption of NYPD radio communication, and how does it align with law enforcement goals?
What was that? I missed the beginning of the question. What was that?
What efforts are being made to educate both the media and the public about the reasons behind the encryption of the NYPD radio communications, and how does it align with your law enforcement goals?
I've done a press conference. I did a forum on public safety with Deputy Mayor Banks, where that was discussed. We're going around and talking at universities. So this weekend, last weekend, I was out of commission, so my captain went out on my behalf. But 2 weeks before that, I was speaking at Fordham University, and we discussed radio encryption, cybersecurity, and technology initiatives that we have ongoing.
And this is borough citywide?
Yes.
And how many boroughs have you visited so far?
Well, the ones that I just mentioned are the ones that were specific, and they were publicized throughout the whole city. So,
What boroughs have you visited so far?
They were all streamed.
Yes, okay. What boroughs have you visited?
Visited for what? For what purpose?
To do your education of the public.
I'm scheduled to go to the 100th precinct in January.
And where's that located for the general public who doesn't know where that is?
Rockaways, the Rockaways.
In Queens?
Yes.
And have you been to Brooklyn?
I have not been to Brooklyn to talk about radio encryption.
Okay, so what Brooklyn is waiting for you.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Any further? Councilmember Mealy now has questions.
Yes, I just want to be quick on this. How will the encryption impact the ability of the volunteer groups and the community organizations? Like, I still don't hear it.
I heard your question.
Because when they use the find out what's going on, we call them ambulance chasers.
Yeah.
You're aware of them, right?
Right. So that's part of the problem, and probably another justification for encryption, right? So
you said that you have the 81st, and I believe the only elected official with Brooklyn South and Brooklyn North. And you just said that you haven't came to Brooklyn North as of yet. We definitely would need to have you come to Brooklyn North as soon as possible. And you saying that we could go on this website and find out the archives of all the transcripts of the...
yeah, it's on YouTube. I'll go home and watch it on YouTube.
Oh my God. Okay.
But by the way, I'm not the only person that speaks. We train all executives and our technologies and what we're doing, and those executives work in precincts, and they have forums with the community on a regular basis. But I'll definitely go out to Brooklyn.
Thank you.
I worked the beginning of my career in Brooklyn North. So
how soon has this been in place, the encryption? I'm sorry, I came late.
the encryption for Citywide 4 probably started in the spring, and we completed the upgrade to Brooklyn North in September.
Oh, in September? So that was just recent. With the perpetrator who stabbed it was a couple, and one of the young men stabbed the young man, and he passed away. And I was driving by 81st Precinct going to work, and I saw the press out there. So I said, what is going on? I stopped going to work to go back to find out, how was the press notified so soon that the perpetrator had been captured and they were set up right in front of the 81st Precinct? So how did you get in contact with them so fast? Or how did the press know of that so fast?
No, the press is pretty good at finding out about things,
But I
especially
thought
by
it was
monitoring.
encrypted.
Oh, you mean for Brooklyn?
Yes. On the 81st, this is an incident.
Like I said before, that's just one source of information for the press. So social media, I don't know if you guys
You
look.
told me the police department put it on social media before they let the...
I don't know how they got there. What I'm trying to.
That's why I'm trying to understand how, if it's encrypted, how does the press know so soon?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I know that there's information available to the press that can assist them to responding to
So
incidents,
is the
apart from
encryption
the police
really
radio.
Necessary? Shouldn't you just inform the press?
Police, we didn't set up this system to stop the press from doing their job.
No, we definitely don't want
We set up this system so that way, because it needed to be upgraded, and because other bad actors use our radio systems against us.
So are you putting the press in that group?
No,
They're separate.
no, right, exactly.
They are separate.
They are separate, correct.
So if an incident happened, it is an outlet that the press would be informed.
Well, we haven't made that decision yet. That's the considerations that we're evaluating, but we do not group in the press, legitimate press, with interlopers.
Have any insurance carriers been arrested in regards to getting the information off the scanner and going straight to the hospital and asking someone who has been in an accident to sign up with their insurance? Have anyone
Throughout my career,
data
throughout
on
my
that?
throughout my career, there's been many investigations and arrests regarding
Any
insurance
arrests?
fraud. I'm not sure how much of those are really were caused by monitoring the police radio. But we do know, right? There's a term called ambulance chasers. There's tow trucks, right? Also that chase accidents, right? So that's another big problem that we have is that sometimes people that they have a different agenda, right? People try to make money off the radio, and we got to be careful about those people and their response because they create a dangerous situation for traffic and possibly committing other crimes like fraud.
So you will be putting them in categories.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. They're all use cases. They're all people that we would consider for who would be eligible for access to encrypted radio channels.
So when do you think you'll have that in place?
By the end of the project, which is the end of 2024.
24. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Mealy. We have some follow-up questions by our public advocate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just really quick, because I think it, and by the way, when you have Councilmember Holden and myself with some of the similar concerns, but yes, there is. But something you said, you had a lot of arrests during your tenure where you found people with radio device. So, and that is before the encryption has occurred. So this has always been an issue. And so, I mean, I heard you mention that there's been uptick in 2016, and you mentioned one case. Sometimes we use the worst case scenario to impact people's emotion, but I want to make sure that we're talking about a much bigger threat than was there before. And I don't know that I've heard that. Like, I'm worried about is this like you've mentioned that you switch channels to try to run away. Is this you're trying to avoid what was a nuisance by having something that's easier? So I'm very concerned about that, and I just wanted to put that on the record. And I'm concerned that this is happening unilaterally, like you're kind of doing it and then having discussions as opposed to discussions happening before this is done, because there seems to be a lot of questions that are unanswered. With the public in general, I think I still want to get some more, but I can understand some concerns there. With the press in particular, I think I'm even more concerned about why we're going to be encrypting them. And it sounded like there has been a drop. I know there's been a drop in Brooklyn in general and in Brooklyn South. They're on a 10-year safety record. Shout out to a lot of folks who worked on that. And it doesn't seem like there's this discernible difference between the places that have the encryption and the places that don't. So why are we doing it?
Sir, we're not trying to exaggerate the severity of the problem. But when you say there aren't that many, every single one is an opportunity to stop an emergency communication from a police officer requesting help. In November 9th, 1989, I was shot at by 3 people in Fort Greene in Ingersoll houses. And I was able to get on my radio and say, call for assistance. And within 30 seconds, I had police officers there that helped save my life. If somebody was transmitting that one time during that transmission, I would be dead.
Exactly. First of all, I'm glad you're not, and I'm glad it worked. That's the excuse every time, though. There's always, if we keep everybody in the house, we'll have an actual safe city. That's just the truth.
I disagree with you. I think that's a valid excuse.
No, wait. Let me finish. I'm just saying, every time there's a question, we'll point out the time that it could work, regardless of the impact. So there's a lot of things that we can always say if we had done it this one time. I always say if we stop people come out of the banks and look in their briefcases, we can stop a lot of financial crimes, but we will never do it, and for several reasons. And so I'm not saying there's not an issue and that each one of those issues aren't real. I'm asking if something has changed since 1989 to now that has dramatically changed what was occurring there. That's the issue that I'm bringing up. And there's always issues. The question I also have is, does the answer to the issue create bigger problems now than the issue themselves? And so I don't want to downplay what happened to, and I don't want to downplay what is happening in real time to officers who have to make quick decisions in a very stressful time period. I don't want to downplay it at all, but I just want to make sure that we sometimes push things that get our emotions to override our intelligence. So I just want to make sure we're not doing that in this case and have a conversation about these. And again, the fact that NYPD is moving kind of unilaterally is another concern. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gutierrez, Chair Gutierrez.
Thank you. Thank you, Public Advocate, and thank you, Chair. I just had just a couple more questions for MOM specifically, and I know Chair Hanks asked this, but if you could expand on the background checks. Are applicants being informed that background checks are being done? Like, is there a level of consent that they have to provide? And on like the criminal background check, what is the difference in the case of a conviction or an arrest? Like, what is like the rubric that you are all looking at to approve or deny an application?
Okay, all applicants are well aware that the criminal questions are present. They're present. They're part of the application, so it's clear because they have to ask for them. Yeah.
And the background check. How do they know?
So-
Everyone gets a background check, or just when they admit to having an arrest?
So we have a procedure in place where if if a person answers yes to one of the questions, it goes to the legal team for review, and they make that determination whether or not they will assess it from a legal standpoint.
Okay, and in that instance, the applicant is giving consent to said background check.
Yes. No. Yes. Here, why don't you? Our senior counsel.
So, do you want me to repeat it? The question?
Yes, I believe so.
So in the
Starbucks
instance-
Senior Counsel, so first I want to clarify that we don't do what a background check actually means. So we ask very specific questions about specific types of arrests and certain specific types of convictions. And if there is and if an applicant answers yes to any of those questions, then the next step is we follow up with the applicant and we send a request for additional information. So this is how our process operates.
Great. And then in the instance where in this background check, and even the applicant themselves disclosed an arrest or a conviction of some sort, how do you all weigh that in the application? What are you looking for?
So for an first, it's definitely not an automatic denial. It's merely a reason for us to ask for additional information. In cases of conviction, when we make these decisions, we would have to weigh a state law that actually addresses concerns of convicted individuals seeking licensure or employment.
Okay. And are they being informed in the instances where an application is denied because of something in the background check? Are they being informed why they're being denied, and if it's related to anything in their
Every
history?
time an application is denied, we inform the applicant in writing, and that also automatically triggers their right to request an appeal of the denial at oath.
Okay. Yeah, do they know why they're being denied, or is it just
Of
directions
course.
on how to
no,
appeal?
No, our denial, our denial notice is pretty detailed.
I see. Okay.
It's it's several pages long, and I know about that because I'm the person who's issuing every denial that's ever came out of our office.
Got it. So you're like, I'm airtight.
I know exactly what is going on
Got
there.
it.
Yes.
And so since the transition to MOM, and I know you had mentioned about 70% are approved, do you have a number, not a percentage, for how many applications are being denied or have been denied to date?
I have a number.
Okay. And then while you're doing that, can I also just ask, in the application processing, you also shared that there's a number of personal information that you're asking, obviously name, criminal history, number. What is the agency doing to, like, how long do you hold on to that information? And what are you doing to ensure safety and security of applicants' personal identifying information in those instances?
Okay, to first answer your question, about 70% of approved, that's approximately 2,500.
That are approved, and
That are
so
approved, and so denied. So it's not 30% that's been denied, right? It's 10%. The rest, the remaining 20, were either withdrawals or voids, which were due to technical glitches. Again, we just digitized everything, so we have been spending time enhancing our portal and sort of, correcting any technical glitches. So 10%. It's about 300 and something
that are denied.
That are denied.
Okay, that's pretty good.
But I can get you an exact figure.
Sure. I mean, and just on the last question about ensuring the security and safety of the personal information from applicants, is there something that you all do or looking to do to ensure that there's no, since you're 100% digital, there could be a breach of, all these folks' personal identifying information. What system do you have in place to protect that?
I mean, currently we're using Salesforce as our developer for the portal, and we are in constant communication with them. We actually have a managed service team that we can rely on in case any glitches come up. But in terms of personal identifying information, we work with Salesforce. Our office and OTI works together to make sure that our system is fully secure and that no, information is compromised.
Okay. Maybe, we can also touch base with OTI to just get more information on what that looks like.
No problem.
I've got one more question for the chief. I'm not sure if you're aware of the New York State Senate bill called Keep Police Radio Public Act. Are you familiar with that bill? Yeah. Are you, and so I'll just expand for everyone, the bill would require any law enforcement agency in the state which chooses to encrypt its radio communications to establish a written policy which allows authorized members of the press and emergency services organizations real-time access to communications and no more than 10-minute delay for members of the public. Obviously, you're in the exploratory phase, still looking into it, but are you all looking to work with the sponsors of this bill? What has been the agency's response to whether, like, the timeliness? I know you all are looking for a decision to make a decision by the end of next year. Just curious if you have any immediate concerns about that. Is it working against your timeline?
So the bill was just introduced on Friday. So we're still reviewing, and we will work with the sponsors if they're willing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair. And lastly, we'll hear from Councilmember Palladino.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for your time and your patience. The questioning has been quite long, and your statements have been very, very good. I just want to say this. I cut to the meat and the potatoes all the time, so I'm not going to shock anybody here. This is a 40-year-old antiquated system that must be fixed. This is necessary for the safety of our New York City Police Department. We have stripped them of just about everything they've got. So now we're going to talk about how things changed since 1989. The world has changed 10 times over since 1989. They need their radios to be encrypted. We have got enough people out there today doing the wrong thing, listening in on messages. This is a security breach. In turn, with a security breach, what does that mean? That means you put our 32,000 police officers at risk. We already have them with body cameras. We already have their immunity taken away, so anybody could sue them. They become docked, an open book. What more do we want? Aren't they entitled to make that call that they need help without 20 different people listening in on the call? As an elected official, I keep very close contact with my precincts, the 109 and the 111th. Information is given freely. Transparency? How much more transparency does anybody want? Really? Before it's all lost. We are going downhill here. Now you want this as well? They're one piece of equipment left that can guarantee them safety, and we want to take it away? The answer to that question is no. Absolutely not. They are entitled to that much. Simple. Okay, that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Palladino. So that concludes. I don't have any council members that have questions. I just want to say this was great, a great testimony. It was clear. You came prepared, and so thank you very much. And we look forward to getting some of the answers to the questions that we did ask offline. And I appreciate all of you coming in today to testify for this important hearing. I'd like to thank my colleagues, Chair Ong and Chair Gutierrez, and the Public Advocate Jamani Williams and the staff. So and then we'll go into the public testimony.
Okay, while the administration is exiting, I just want to make a quick announcement. We're going to turn to public testimony next. For in-person panelists, please come up. Excuse me. For in-person panelists, please come up to the dais once your name is called. For virtual panelists, we will be calling individuals one by one to testify. We will be limiting testimony today to 3 minutes each. Please begin once the sergeant has started the timer. For virtual panelists, once your name is called, a member of our staff will unmute you and the sergeant at arms will set a timer and give you the go-ahead to begin. Please wait for the sergeant to announce that you may begin before delivering your testimony. We're just going to pause for a second before starting public testimony. Okay, I'm going to call up the first panel. We'll hear from Mickey Ostrencher, and I apologize if I get names wrong along the way here. David Donovan, Diane Kennedy, Bruce Kotler, and Jeremy Chase. And we'll also on this panel hear from Todd Maisel via Zoom. If those panelists can go up to the dais. I apologize. Andrew Frame as well. We'll start with Mr. Ostrencher.
Should I start? Okay, sure. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to testify regarding press access to encrypted NYPD radio transmissions. My name is Mickey Ostreicher, and I'm the General Counsel of the National Press Photographers Association, NPPA. We commend the council members, particularly those on the Committee of Public Safety, the Committee on Technology, and the Committee on Governmental Operations, for exercising oversight regarding media transparency, where the NYPD has already encrypted and intends to further encrypt its radio frequencies. Our goal is to ensure that the First Amendment right of the public to receive information about what their government is doing is upheld through continuing and crucial real-time access by the press to radio transmissions involving matters of public concern. As a visual journalist with over 40 years' experience in both print and broadcast, I cannot overstate the importance of journalists being able to monitor in real time public safety and law enforcement radio transmissions. During my career, I was only able to get to fires, accidents, and breaking news stories in a timely manner and with a better understanding of the situation I was going to cover by having heard those radio calls. As NPPA's General Counsel, I have been dealing with radio encryption on a national basis. In New York City, we are part of a New York media consortium whose members met with the NYPD at the beginning of this year to express our concerns regarding this issue. During that meeting, we were assured that no NYPD frequencies had yet been encrypted and that NYPD was just in the testing phase. We were also asked by the NYPD to brief our major concerns and possible solutions, which we did in a 6-page memorandum. To date, NYPD has encrypted at least 10 frequencies. Despite our efforts to work cooperatively, the NYPD has not been forthcoming in any meaningful way or been willing to share its encryption plans or articulate its intentions to provide journalists with access to such crucial communications and information in real time. It's clear that the NYPD wasn't interested in hearing us, as they just all left. As the U.S. Department of Justice, DOJ, noted, transparency is essential to positive police-community relationships. When a critical incident occurs, agencies should try to release as much information as possible, as soon as possible, so that the community will not feel that information is being purposefully withheld from them. Visual journalists have far more in common with NYPD than it first appears. While police protect and serve, journalists inform and serve. Those in both professions rush towards critical incidents while others run in the opposite direction. Neither group can work from home, and both are often attacked or criticized for doing their jobs. Recognizing that community support is a critical factor for the NYPD and the press to effectively perform their societal functions. It really should be kept in mind that information, critical information delayed, is information denied. I appreciate the opportunity to submit this testimony and look forward to cooperatively working with you and the NYPD regarding police radio encryption to help build public trust through improved transparency and ensured accountability. Thank you for your attention in this important issue. I will be submitting more detailed written testimony before the time period is up, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I do actually have a question.
Sure.
You said you submitted something to NYPD.
We did.
What was that?
It was a 6-page memorandum. David's holding it up. We never really got a response.
I would love to see it.
It will be part of
what you,
the
I think,
submission that I'll be making. It'll be an appendix.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
David Donovan.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Chairperson Gutierrez, Ong, and Hanks for this important hearing. My name is David Donovan. I'm president of the New York State Broadcasters Association. My members include every television station in the city of New York, most of the radio stations, and indeed most of the media across New York. My background, just by way so you understand, I was an attorney at the Federal Communications Commission for 10 years. I served on the Department of Commerce's Spectrum Management Advisory Committee, which dealt with frequency use. I was also very much involved in the engineering, shifting the entire television industry from analog to digital, and right now I also serve as a coordinator for the emergency broadcast system in New York State. Let's, without going, what I'd like to do is engage in a conversation, if that's okay. And I have 2 minutes left. Where we are right now in Brooklyn is broadcasters, even under the Stafford Act, are recognized as first informers. We are there when an emergency happens, when there's criminal activity, to inform the public immediately, get out of here. Don't come down here. That's not where you are in Brooklyn right now. In Brooklyn, the only real-time information that you're going to get about activity is from bystanders using cell phones and posting on social media, or to the police using their social media. I would submit the worst situation you could have is relying on bystander social media. Whether intentionally or unintentionally, you're spreading out misinformation to millions of New Yorkers, which then forces and it could be that the NYPD is doing a great job, but the bystander, just in the way they're cutting the video, may make them look bad. So we don't want to force New Yorkers to that platform to learn about information. Now, journalists in general, but broadcasting journalists, have been rated by Pew, go through the research, Pew Research or what have you, as the most trusted source in local media. But we won't be given access. And if you go through this whole issue, you've seen a lot of conflating issues. The need to upgrade communications, understandable. The need to encrypt to keep bad guys away, absolutely understandable. And then reporters' access, which is a third part of this issue. Chief Beltran, which was great saying crime went down in I have no idea whether it went down in Brooklyn or not, but let's assume it did. What does any of that have to do with denying reporters access? I'm sure he isn't saying that denying reporters access was the reason why crime went down. It is the communication systems itself. If I just may indulge you just for a few more minutes, I want to address some of the key points that have been made today. First, technical interference. I've tracked down interference guys for most of my life on police frequencies and broadcast frequencies. Technical interference only occurs when you are transmitting. Broadcasters and reporters are not asking for transmitters. We're asking for receivers. It's a catcher's mitt. It's a glove. I can't cause interference if I have a receiver. Secondly, the idea that we don't know under a digital system who's turned it on or not, that is precisely why you have a digital system, because you can have conditional access. Some of you have Sirius XM in your car. Some of you haven't subscribed, don't. That signal's going down the whole city. The reason why some of you can get it and some of you can't is because the technology exists to have receivers conditionally. Some can access and some can't. It proves the point that NYPD could very well have a system, very much like Las Vegas, where the media is allowed access, while at the same time trying to figure out whether the general public should retain it. Protecting officers. I have family that's in law enforcement, not in this state, but they're in law enforcement. Nowhere in any of this testimony have we ever heard that access to information by a journalist has caused harm to a police officer. We're not the bad guys. We're the ones that have responsibilities to broadcasters to serve the public interest or print journalists to serve their communities. Real time. Look, we all live in New York, all right? We've all driven in New York. If you delay access to information by 30 minutes, that means your access is delayed an hour to an hour and a half, and if it rains, you're going to miss the event altogether. And the only people who will have real-time access are the bystanders that have their cell phones that may be sending out misinformation. So real-time access, if we're going to serve the public during emergencies, is absolutely essential. Whether Baltimore delays it or not, That's really irrelevant to New York, to be honest with you, or Chicago. Las Vegas has made this work for a number of years. I think we really should explore it. The final thing, and I'll wrap up because I've been too long here. The idea that, well, let's wait and we will study this. And once we study it, then we can make a decision. Number one, I've dealt with technology for years. What you do is you set the policy goal and then you develop that technology to meet the policy goal. You don't sit back and wait. Two, we have been waiting since last January when we first met, and all we ever hear is, we're going to look at this, we're going to look at this, and you heard that today. But while we're waiting, all of a sudden, precincts are getting blacked out with no alternative in terms of providing reporter access to this information. The dominoes have started to fall. And based on testimony here today, it's going to be completed in 2024, and you all are going to be faced with a fait accompli. How about this for a thought? If this is all an experiment in Brooklyn, why not concurrently test reporters' access in those areas where you're deciding to black out? That would make sense to do it simultaneously, but that's not what you're seeing here. What you're seeing here is systematically we're denying access across New York City, and by the end of the year, our biggest fear is that you'll be presented with a fait accompli. Look at NYPD has a tough job. They keep civilization in place. We understand that. We have always worked with the police departments. But what you're seeing right now is, in a zeal to develop a digital system, you are now conflating issues, saying that, oh, because we have bad guys, we're going to deny reporters access. I think that's not where you want to go, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Diane Kennedy.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify here. My name is Diane Kennedy, and I'm the president of the New York News Publishers Association, and I'm a former newspaper reporter quite a while ago. I'm going to throw away most of my testimony because my colleagues have already said a lot of what I was going to say. So thank you for saving me the effort, because there are some other points to bring up. One is that lack of access to scanner communications is a public safety issue for journalists as well as members of the public. Journalists are running toward an event, and they may not know what they're running toward. So to the extent that they can maintain their own personal safety, it's helpful for them to know what they're running toward. But they're also letting members of the public know what's going on so that they know that they need to avoid a certain area of the city because there's a structural collapse or an attack or a bombing, something along those lines. And for example, while we were sitting here, I was looking to see the effect in Chicago of the time delay. And I was looking at Fox 32, the television station in Chicago. There were incidents, including an incident where a number of people were firing gunshots. There were 40 shots fired in a public area around a courthouse and a police station. The media didn't find out about that until well after it happened, so they couldn't warn members of the public that this was taking place. There was another incident where there was an individual with a rifle walking down a residential street. They found out much later. And this person was walking down the street at dinner time when there were families outside. They couldn't let anyone know. So that's why real-time access is vital for the press. It's not impossible to find a way to define journalists for granting secure access to radio communications. Obviously, you've just heard from the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment. They have a definition that they can use. But New York State law provides us with a definition. It's under Section 79H of the New York State Civil Rights Law. And David and I used it when we were working with the New York State Department of State to craft regulations regarding the purchase of body armor by journalists. There was a new gun law passed in New York State after the horrific racist shootings in Buffalo, where the legislature was in a hurry to do something, and they did a lot of things. But sometimes when legislation is crafted quickly, it has to be fixed up a little bit later on. So they prohibited the purchase of body armor by anyone who's not law enforcement or military. But there are other professions like ours that need body armor. Journalists are frequently in harm's way, not just in overseas war zones, but here in New York City. And with that, I will finish up. I'll be happy to provide that definition from 79H of Civil Rights Law to you. Thank you, and of course, happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Next, we'll turn to Bruce Kotler.
My name is Bruce Kotler. I am the president of the New York Press Photographers Association, also known as the NYPPA. I am here on behalf of our organization to make our stance on this matter clear. The NYPPA is opposed to a blanket police encryption effort. We are sympathetic to the issues that the NYPD face. However, we are concerned about the matters of transparency. Should total encryption come to pass, the public has a right to know what occurs when a crime is committed. And the media is necessary to check to ensure some measures of that aforementioned transparency. In cases such as Amadou Diallo, Sean Bell, and Eric Gardner, the media was vital in providing insight as to what really occurred at the time of the incidents. Should this encryption measure pass, it will be negatively affecting the community, the media, and run counter to Mayor Adams' stated vision for a transparent administration. We believe that this situation can be remedied by allowing media access to monitor encrypted channels in order to continue to serve the public good. We certainly respect the concerns of city police for security, but that must not come at the cost of transparency to those that they must protect. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Jeremy Chase.
Thank you very much. My name is Jeremy Chase, and I'm a partner in the Media and Entertainment Group at the law firm Davis Wright Tremaine LLP. My firm represents many of members of the New York News Publishers Association, the New York State Broadcasters Association, and the National Press Photographers Association, and advise them on all manner of news gathering issues. So I echo and endorse the testimony of my colleagues up here today. Today I appear, though, on behalf of WABC and ABC News, two of the largest and most trusted news organizations in the city and in the country at large. ABC has profound concerns about the NYPD's encryption of its police dispatch communications. For decades, police dispatch communications have served as a critical source of breaking news around the city. ABC's newsrooms, as well as the newsrooms at various news organizations in the city, listen to and deploy their resources in response to these communications, and do so for a variety of reasons: to inform the public in a timely and accurate manner of criminal activity occurring in the city, to communicate critical public safety information to the public at large, to provide on-the-scene reporting to ensure that the NYPD is doing its job in securing crime scenes and serving the public and performing its duties, and also to ensure the safety of our reporters covering these events. Transparency via contemporaneous access to police dispatch communications is essential to these aims. While ABC acknowledges that there may well be a need to update and or upgrade the NYPD's communications system, it must not do so at the expense of an informed citizenry. Justice Louis Brandeis once said that sunlight is said to be the best of disinfectants. Encryption of police dispatch communications without appropriate accommodations for continued and uninterrupted press access would cast a pall of darkness on the public's understanding of crime and the NYPD's response thereto. It would be a disservice to the citizens of New York and would result in harm to the public at large. We strongly urge the Council to take measures to ensure that the press maintains contemporaneous access to this vital source of timely public information. WABC and ABC News look forward to working with the Council, the NYPD, and all the other stakeholders on this issue of the highest importance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, Andrew Frame.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Frame, and I am the founder and CEO of the Citizen app. And I'm honored to be here to talk about a product and a company that I started right here in New York City. I came up for the idea for Citizen and built the prototype about a mile away from here many years ago. The threat and proposed introduction of radio encryption by the New York Police Department is a critical turning point for safety in New York City. It threatens to shut down and erase years of extraordinary technological and public safety progress that our New York City Citizen team has made, which is working to keep New York City, and most importantly, our most underserved communities safe. First, a little background. I came up with the idea to build a global safety network powered by the everyday citizens of the world, the 6.5 billion plus smartphones that we collectively own, and our strong will and desire for our own personal safety as well as the love for our community. My premise was to democratize all real-time crime and fire information and give it directly to the people, the citizens themselves. When there is a fire in your building, why wouldn't you give people more time to get out safely? When a child is kidnapped, why wouldn't we immediately activate the tens of thousands of nearby people to be on the lookout? The vision was to make kidnapping nearly impossible. I saw my idea before we had a single user or even started developing the product as timely, necessary, and inevitable. Fast forward to now. Since that day, we have signed up more than 15 million users across our major national cities. We've issued more than 10 billion real-time location-based critical safety notifications, and we've helped save countless lives. Our over 15 million citizen users have received real-time hyperlocal safety notification for over 30,000 fires, over 28,000 assaults, and over 50,000 events involving weapons. We could not be more proud. It's hard to measure the impact that this transparency creates, as we don't always hear in the moment how it might have saved a life. But you don't have to search far to find a New Yorker who has a story about how Citizen helped save them or somebody they know. Our biggest and most important market is the one we started in, right here, New York City. Citizen's impact on New York City has been beyond anything we could have imagined the day that it hit Apple's App Store. More than 3.5 million New Yorkers have signed up to Citizen, and we have become an essential component of the day-to-day life here in New York City. The New York Police Department clearly sees value in our service, which might be why they created their own competitive app to Citizen. It unfortunately did not gain any traction. Citizen has been developed by proven technologists. We have raised over $100 million in venture capital to develop Citizen in order to protect everyday people and save lives. Citizen should be working in cooperation with the NYPD, not in competition or against. We have spoken about the stats and statistics. Now let's take a moment to talk about the Citizen user base. Most technology companies have as their earliest users technology early adopters and high-income earners, not Citizen. Our strongest communities and densest user concentrations are among the most underserved communities that are hardest hit by crimes and tragedies. When we activate a city, the underserved neighborhoods explode and get to scale the fastest. In some of these communities here in New York, we have an over 60% adoption rate of our product. These are not communities and people who want Citizen. These are communities who need and require Citizen. Why is that? There are long-standing inequities in public safety which we are helping to address. For example, when a child is kidnapped or goes missing, if the child happens to be from the Upper East Side, oftentimes the search can quickly become national or international headlines, building up global interest in finding the child. When a child is kidnapped or goes missing in an underserved community in Brooklyn, Queens, or the Bronx, this almost never happens. Because Citizen was designed as a fully democratized system with equal access for all, every kidnapping gets the same exact treatment, regardless of zip code or skin color. We often deal with families from underserved communities who plead for but are unable to get Amber Alerts or much interest at all in their missing child. We operate a missing person desk at Citizen, which works tirelessly around the clock, powered by technology and community to get the children back to their families. Our missing person and children desk has initiated over 2,000 activation and searches, with a sizable percentage of them being successful. And right when the need for Citizen and our product has never been greater, Citizen's very existence is at risk. If the New York Police Department carries forward with their intention of encryption, it will shut down our largest and most important American market, depriving the people of New York from our product and service. This dangerous policy change represents the destruction of our popular public service and the platform here in New York, putting New Yorkers, and most importantly, our underserved New Yorkers, directly in harm's way. While the rationale for encryption is improving safety for officers, a goal we are deeply aligned with, multiple peer-reviewed independent academic studies have proven that Citizen saves lives and is not linked to any harm to the police force or the public. We have developed extensive policies which are followed in order to help keep officers safe, such as never publishing any sort of private tactical coordination which could jeopardize officer safety. So in order to continue to provide New Yorkers with this vital connective tissue between our communities and public safety agencies, we are advocating for two potential solutions. One, adjust the encryption policy so we can continue to get open access to critical real-time safety data in New York City, or give Citizen access to the encrypted radio system in real time, which we need in order to continue providing our safety product to the 2.4 million New Yorkers who use Independent on it 24/7. Thank you for your consideration, your time, and your service to us all. I look forward to your questions and working with you to develop a solution that will continue ensuring and improving the safety of our fellow New York City residents.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Todd Mazel, who's with us via Zoom. And I'd just like to remind everyone that public testimony is limited to 3 minutes each. Thank you.
Okay. I'm Todd Mazel. I'm a founder of the New York Media Consortium that brought together all the organizations. And I've had 40 years in the media business. And I've been chasing radios for that long. I've always been a friend of the police department. But what they've been doing is, for us, the media, is a real betrayal. It's not about radio encryption. It's whether you trust the NYPD controlling the narrative. Do you trust the police to be 100% honest, fair, transparent, with the most regressive transparency policy in the history of New York City? They claim encryption is about safety and will give some sort of access to the media. The entire Brooklyn North area is dark. 2.5 million Citizen app followers no longer get information there. The press has been locked out with no set date for giving access, despite their promises. Instead of making the public safe, the public is less safe, and the NYPD fails to report crime in the highest crime areas. They do send emails. One double homicide in Brooklyn on September 9th wasn't reported until Saturday morning, September 14th. Other crimes have taken up to a day before anything is known. The Eric Garner video would have been gone if the Daily News photographer hadn't heard the cryptic radio calls. Pantaleo took 5 years to be fired by the NYPD. Do you trust the police? Remember Justin Volpe? What did he do with a plunger to Abner Weimer at a precinct station house? A cop doesn't have to be a particular color. Witness the 5 Tennessee cops who killed Tyree Nichols. Cops are cops. They are human because they are armed and have incredible power. They need checks and balances, something encryption eliminates. You will only know what they want you to know. 4 years ago, I covered a crash in Flatbush in which an alleged drunk driver killed a young woman, injured a friend. The driver was a cop. Nobody did a breathalyzer. The reports were hidden. The DA refused to prosecute. Do you trust the cops? If you give them this power, not require them to explain what they plan, when they will give press access and to what frequencies, you can't trust them. Their plan was to give us nothing. Otherwise, in 6 years that they've been working on this, where is it? The plan was to have no plan. The NYPD fails to honor legal FOIL requests because there are no personal repercussions. I have more than a dozen FOIL requests rejected or put off for years. The change to MOAN credentialing something the NYPD is now using against us. All the work you've done on the BLM banner, all the efforts you made on the Post Act that they failed to abide, all you've done to make the NYPD a great department will be for naught if you drop the
Thank you
ball.
for your testimony.
Well, I'm done.
Thank you.
You said a lot.
Councilmember Holden, I know you have questions to the panel.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I totally agree with what every one of you said from the media. We're the media capital of the world. If we just cut off the media to any, to this encryption completely, it would be really counterproductive, but really a crime in itself. Because, and I wanted to tell the citizen person, I think he left, but I wanted to say that there was I have the Citizen app. Obviously, I paid extra for to hear the whole commentary from the police. And my wife was out, and there was a man with a knife on 79th Street, and she was on the next block. So I was able to get to her and tell her that, look, stay away, get away from there. Very important that we understand we have that information in New York City, because we're really confined here, and we could avoid trouble. But I just wanted to ask anyone on the panel here. We heard about Las Vegas being a good model, and we heard about Chicago, not a good model. I'd like to know the differences that you can tell us what's been happening in Chicago versus Las Vegas or any other city.
Thank you for the question. If you look at a number of cities where this is being examined, all of it is being done in the context of shifting from analog to digital. Now, in Las Vegas and in Clark County, there was a decision that we will allow the media access, but that essentially is where it stops at this point, and they're looking at further analyses there. When you go to Baltimore is looking at a 15-minute delay. In Chicago, it's very interesting because during the election, both candidates said, we want to open this up to immediate access, but then after the election, they now, I believe, although that's still being debated right now, that has been reverted back to 30 minutes. Which, whatever happens in these other cities, New York is unique. New York is different. Even if you're looking at a matter, if you want to get technical about it, the topography of Chicago is different from New York, is different from New Orleans. New Orleans, for example, is a bowl. So you put police communications in the middle, and when the floods come, you have no more police communications, and that's what happened in Katrina. So I understand the architecture, but I think what's really important here and is being missed, it is the policy decision who you want to have access. We all want to not have the bad guys. Now we want to have the press and maybe other groups, but that is a policy decision. And once you make the policy decision, that should guide how the technology is deployed. That's why we asked for this meeting way back in January and beforehand. And in our discussions, it is our understanding that the technology being deployed will not preclude reporters' access. So the only issue is whether or not you want a reporter to arrive close to on time, given traffic, or late. And that's pretty straightforward. The other issue that I think, and Diane alluded to it, we're not asking for information for all police communications. There are issues where you can use other channels. We're asking for basic dispatch information about where an event is occurring. And the distinction also as to who can get it and who can't was addressed by New York State. The Department of State, in adopting the body armor rules, set a set of rules that say who should have access and who shouldn't. Ironically, the entity that enforces that and makes the decision who can sell body armor to whom is the New York Police Department. So our position is, from day one, let's use the body armor analysis that New York State has already crafted and use that as a model and build on that. And that's what we've asked, well, for over a year.
Yeah, and just to follow up, Chair, for a second. As an elected official, I have to know what's going on in my community immediately because I get constituents calling me. And that's why I ask the COs of the precinct many times, and each one's different. Obviously, I have to read about it sometimes in the paper, which I get very upset at. I don't like that. I said, you need to, when something major is happening in my community, I need to know, I have to stay one step ahead of constituents. I know the gentleman from Citizen, you're from Citizen? Yeah. Because I just wanted to tell you, you mentioned that you hear some stories about how people avoid areas. My wife was on 80th Street, and a knifing came over because I have the subscription to the extra, so I can hear the whole conversation. And I found out it was a gentleman with a knife waving it at people on 79th Street, and she was on 80th Street. I said, stay away. So she went the other way. We need to have you. Are you considered press, by the way? No, but you don't have the credentials then. So you would be shut. You would need credentials, which I think Citizen gives as an elected official. I get a lot of information from Citizen, and I could stay one step ahead since I got the expanded version of it. So I don't need my constituents calling me and saying, what happened on 79th Street? What happened over there? And that's what I think we have to protect here, that we need the free press, we need a press that could have access, but we also need valuable services like yours that can do it in real time. And not having the bad guys have the information, that's what we have to figure out. Thank you. Thank you, chairs.
Very interesting. And I do agree 100%, as Bob said. I'm really, really curious, though. How do you make this work? I mean, what you just said here today was crystal clear. You have access because the people need to know. You're not looking for full access. You're looking for where and when and what's going on, which seems simple enough to me. So why isn't there a channel what went wrong here that they have the one antiquated system that's 40 years old that now they want to change, which in turn will block you out? Do I understand that correctly? Okay. So now why, while we're redoing things, make it so that you, as part of the press, can get access to what's needed? I, on the other hand, with Citizens App, because you're an app, it's completely different than the press. You're not even in the same category as the press. You're an app that people download onto their phone, and not to say anything against you, so don't come at me. Just to let you know, a lot of things that come on my Citizen App is exaggerated and false information. But I live in Queens, so that might be very different than Brooklyn. But if you would please answer my question, that would be great.
So, if I could for just a second, I know Chief Beltran was talking about the encryption key.
Yes.
So, basically, if you go through the process that David explained in terms of who might qualify for getting that encryption key, that's all that needs to be done.
Well, then we have to talk some more about that. This needs more conversation, because there should be never a blackout of the press, ever.
Let me add, what you see happening here are the problems that existed in an analog system, where we could not control who was receiving our information, being transposed into a digital system where that issue goes away because you're encrypting. Essentially, you can do two things, as Mickey indicated. Over the air, you can send out, because you're sending out on multiple channels, you're sending out little packets of information. You're putting encryption instructions on each packet. And you can have, through an applications process, through NYPD or through the mayor's press office, saying these are the people who are qualified to get an encryption key. And that way, that information goes only to those people over the air. The other way to do it is right now you have online services such as Broadcastify, is instead of doing it over the air, you actually do it through an online service, but give each, quote, subscriber or entity to that the access code, password, what have you. And if you violate that, if you do something bad, then you can set up an administrative process to take that access away.
Thank you. Thank you. You guys can talk offline. Thank you.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Thank you to this panel.
Thank you.
I'll now call up the next panel, which will include Usman Chahan, Olia Scooter Caston, Brianna Lip, and Christopher Leon Johnson.
No, I don't know. They don't own my rules either.
I'll go first. I got a dip. Yo, can I go?
Ready to start.
All right. Ready? Hey, what's up, Chairwoman Hanks, Chair Gutierrez, Honorary Mr. Bob Holden, who's the GOAT, a real dude in the city council. Hope you run for mayor, bro. All right, so I'm gonna say this right now. You know that Beltran guy, the officer? He's a clown. He don't know what he's talking about. This is basic censorship with the members of the media, because what's going on is clowns like Beltran, who should lose his job. He shouldn't be part of DCPI. He should be working on the beat in the 75th precinct, serving, dealing with the clowns who shoot each other all the time, because he don't know what he's doing. He's not but a shill to this fake commissioner, Caban, who's not even the real commissioner. He's he's nothing but a fraud. All this is about is making sure that guys like Scooter, people like Scooter, Usman, you have, what's his name, Lloyd Mitchell, and all the big-time media people, members of the NYPPA, this guy right here, only cover these corrupt nonprofits for free. That's all they care about. We don't see not one nonprofit here. You don't see people stop spying. You don't see people from CPR. None of these nonprofits are here because they want people like us to cover these guys for free, because they get mad that we're covering the shootings to get paid instead of us covering the nonprofits to get paid. So I'm gonna say this right now. I know there's a lot the city council can't really do. Shout out to Senator Naris for introducing that bill in the state senate to make sure that this doesn't happen in New York City with the encryptions. But I think members of the city council, no disrespect, Mr. Bob Holden, I think you should introduce a bill to the city council to make sure this doesn't happen. But we all know this is about is that none of these council members don't want to piss off the PBA and all these other, the PBA and these unions. So they don't want to introduce it. And I get it. But don't jeopardize our living and our work to appease these corrupt police unions, because these unions don't give a crap about none of you guys, because all they see you guys are expendable. You guys screw up, piss them off, they can get another batch of council members and state members to take over and do your work. So don't jeopardize our living to appease these inept, out of touch unions. And that's the truth. Like I said, Beltran's a clown. He gotta go. He need to get fired. He need to go just retire and sit in the retirement home, because that's all he should be doing. He's a joke. He don't know what he's doing. Like I said, go to 75th precinct and go deal with the guys shooting each other all the time all over Brownsville, because you don't deserve to be DCPI. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know about the shield to Caban, who's another clown in the NYPD. So that's all I got to say, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome.
Okay.
I'm sorry. My first time. Good afternoon, members of this committee. My name is Usman Chauhan. I work as a freelance news photographer for Loud Labs News. After hearing this testimony from NYPD's Chief Information Officer Ruben Beltran on the rollout of the encryption process, I have more questions than answers. I find Chief Beltran's remarks to be atrocious and a dagger to the press and journalism community in New York City. The use of police radios have given local journalists and photographers a window to show New Yorkers what's happening in their communities. Encryption will inevitably cause access to transparent information on important news stories of the day to be controlled by a government agency. This will cause us merely to be stenographers for government bureaucrats. In an age of growing misinformation and polarization, the public and the press must have a form of access to listen in to what our tax-funded police department and government agencies are doing. Chief Beltran claims that the planned rollout will keep our officers and the public safe. I respectfully disagree. This will be a shot in the foot situation. More of the public will distrust whatever the police say. No one is against the improvement of technology. We don't use VHS tapes or cassette players anymore. But this is not an excuse to stymie the public's right to know. Thank you very much.
Okay. A lot of what I was going to say have already been said, but the NYPD has started sharing their frequencies with the press since the 1930s and provided media outlets with information about things from 9/11 to Sandy Hook and floods and massive fires. What I was going to say about the Citizen app has already been said about how important that information is used to find missing people. The statement from the police commissioner here today that claims to give the statement to the media, that claims that the police gives the statement to the media all the time in response to how this will affect journalists' ability to be first responders on the scene is not a comforting statement, but concerning, as the police should never be the voice reporting on the job of what the journalists should. The ability to listen to police radios has enabled for the media to serve as checks and balances on the NYPD, allowing independent coverage of stories from the chokehold of Eric Gardner as he was arrested for selling cigarettes in Staten Island in 2014, the shooting of Abdul Diano in the Bronx, as he was shot 41 times by an officer who thought he had a gun when he was pulling out his wallet, and of the police shooting of Sean Bell in his car in Queens on the eve of his wedding in 2006. These are three examples that journalists use the radio scanners to be able to investigate the truth of what happened. The NYPD representative failed to acknowledge that sometimes the quote-unquote bad actors creating terrorism in the communities of New York City are the police. Journalists offer checks and balances for those bad actors. The claim that they are the most transparent police department in the country is a blatant lie, as the NYPD notoriously has a budgeting of over $200 million every year for settlements related to the police misconduct, and that's already budgeted for. Journalists are first informers, frontline workers that race to give the breaking news, and are truth seekers of the truth. That is not the job of the NYPD, and all this idea of not encryption can create really dangerous blackouts from everything from natural disasters to the truth of police corruption. They should not have control of the dissertation of information. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Olia Fedun Skudacaster, and I'm a founder of New York City-based news agency called FNTV or Freedom News TV. First, after hearing and just seeing NYPD leave before journalists got to testify, which was quite telling and unfortunate because we have a lot to say to them about this issue. So our team, which consists of a group of freelance video journalists, works tirelessly day and night to bring the news straight from the source to the public, community, and local TV. We have worked for years filming crime scenes, accident scenes, and that otherwise may slip through the cracks and never see the light of day. Without access to what has always been the public airwaves, we cannot do our work. Without immediate information that directly involves the citizens of our city, we will only be able to use information from a single source, the NYPD. Reports from DCPI, public NYPD representative, are often very delayed, and majority of incidents are never reported to the press. Some are delayed hours, some are delayed a week. Sometimes, most of the small incidents, we don't get any. I know they use that as an example that they're already sending out information to the press, but that's nowhere nearly sufficient. Encryption without access for journalists would hinder our ability to deliver coverage of important news and events. The public must have access to reports via an independent press of what is going on in the city. We cannot rely on the police or any government agency to be the sole source of information. It is the foundational right and an important service for journalists to independently observe, document, and publish the details that we find, rather than relay a third-party statement, which would be NYPD in this case. I attended the first press conference on encryption at the police academy, and we were told that the reason for encryption is for the safety of the police officers, which they also repeated today. I'm still trying to understand how giving credentialed press access to what has always been public information endangers officers. For my work and the work of my team, accuracy, speed, and accountability are extremely important. Even with a 30-minute delay on a police radio transmissions, our work of providing breaking news to our community would be severely hindered, as most scenes are gone within an hour. Victims' families often rely on our coverage to make sense of what happened to their loved ones. The public relies on our reports to evaluate their safety. Blocking out press from access to vital information will not keep officers safe. Quite possibly, it will have the opposite effect. Please stop using safety as an excuse to hide vital and important information from members of the press. And I wanted to thank those who stayed for our testimony. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I just want to say for the record, often the officers, the higher ranking officers will leave because it's just really difficult to be here this time. But we do have a representative from the NYPD that we have always requested to stay, because I understand how important it is that your testimony is recognized by the people you wanted to hear, not just me, but also the NYPD. So thank you so much, Chris.
No. I mean, let me ask a quick thing. Why is he here? And I'm not trying to be rude to this guy. I know he have a job to do, but what's the point of people like him being here to so-called represent the NYPD and where he's going to give us vague answers? Like, he should just leave. Like, he shouldn't be here. That's my thing. If he's going to be a potted plant for the NYPD and just give us vague answers and just walk away like a coward, he shouldn't just be here. Just go back to the One Police Plaza and just sit in the nice heat. That's my suggestion.
I respect what you're saying,
Yeah.
but this is your opportunity to testify to us.
Yeah.
And it is their opportunity to sit and listen so they can take it back.
Oh, these guys don't listen. So although cops like him, they don't listen. So it don't matter. I mean, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just saying.
I know. I appreciate you all coming out and testifying. Thank you so much. We're going to go to the next panel of people.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to this panel. The final panel will have Dakota Santiago, Lloyd Mitchell, Tim Sheld, Mark Harrigan, Maisie, and on Zoom we'll have Aviv Cintron and Erica Price. If I have not called your name and you do wish to testify, please see the Sergeant at Arms in the back to fill out a witness slip. Oh, 1 second. I'll get it. Yeah, you'll get it. I'll get it to you.
Oh, this is going to be a speed. There was.
You want me to start off, guys?
Yeah, whoever would like to begin.
I'll start off by saying, as 12 years as being a photojournalist covering pretty much Brooklyn and Queens, I've seen a lot. But it's important and paramount that you guys understand what it is that we see out when we're covering these stories. I want to reassure you for fact that we don't ever wish ill will on cops at all. In fact, we would like to reassure you guys that we want officers to get home at the end of their tour. And I also want you guys to know that we're not against officer safety. We need you guys to also know that we don't want the NYPDs to be able to control the narrative. Radio encryption affects people from disadvantaged communities the most and foremost. And within the precincts that are dark now, it's the 10 hard-hitting areas that are riddled with crime, unfortunately, and that's where all of our action is. And you have to understand that this will lead to heartache for families and people involved in these communities that don't understand why this happened to their loved one or what's going on with their loved one. On August 21st, there was a 24-year-old male that was shot and killed by a 15-year-old. A 15-year-old pulled the trigger on a 24-year-old. The only reason that was ever a story is because I was the first photographer on the scene. It happened a mile and a half away from me. And a story never really made all the other local outlets. It was just one of those things that came and went. It's our job to keep information out there for public and for these communities. Other than that, it wouldn't be known of what's going on. And reporters are supposed to help the police get the word out on these stories and understand how they're affecting the police officers, how they're affecting the communities, and how they're affecting us as reporters. We have to also tell those stories on the back end. It would be most paramount if we can get that information in real time and not over a 30-minute delay. I've talked to reporters in Chicago, and that information, it takes them forever to get to. And sometimes Chicago Police Department works the situation really fast. And it's important that we could equally divide up the money within the city government to allocate. Maybe that money goes to schools, maybe it goes to mental health, because that's how you keep crime down on the back end of things, you know? And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I
You're welcome.
appreciate it.
All right. Good afternoon. My name is Dakota Santiago. I'm a photojournalist who currently works overnights as a news stringer for broadcast media and print. My sense of purpose, work-wise, lives and dies with the scanner. The scanner is the equalizer of my field. You know, I would love to be a staffer somewhere, but sometimes when it's not your time yet, it's not. And so I depend on the scanner to deliver the details needed before committing and jetting off to what members of the public should know happened overnight while they slept. Was someone shoved into a moving train? Were innocent children shot at a holiday barbecue in a park? Were swastikas painted into the ground of a local park in Brooklyn? Or were people senselessly assaulted on the basis of hate on the street for a conflict happening thousands of miles away? All these samples I just gave are all stories I've run on at least once in my years covering the beat. All those samples would not be news on the day of the occurrence, if at all, if the police radios were allowed to be encrypted. As things stand currently, the NYPD does not announce most newsworthy events that occur throughout a day unless we're talking events like confirmed homicides, which most of the time reach our desks anywhere from 6 hours to several weeks after the incident occurred, leaving us, most often, with no evidence of a scene at all to photograph. This is why we can ill afford to lose real-time access to police radios. There is nothing easy about witnessing most of the mayhem that occurs in the town that often can lead to the loss of life. What's easy is the ability to evoke a sense of false security when there is no visual evidence of the violence that goes on daily on our streets. You rob the community of the power to demand patrols, more funding, and changes in the strategy or the police department itself when the public is not properly informed in mass of things that may be going sour on their streets. The invitation for misinformation is also given the green light when only one entity is allowed to dictate the events of the matter. If Harlem had been encrypted in July instead of Brooklyn, we wouldn't know to ask DCPI about a 13-year-old shot in the pre-dawn hours of July 4th this year that came over as a 1013, which is the NYPD code for backup officer in distress. In this case, a call for crowd control at 310 West 143rd Street. The 1013 was broadcasted on still open city-wide frequencies, but you had to be listening to division radio, in this case, the confines of the 32nd precinct, to have heard the reason for the commotion was a young teenager, innocent victim, shot in the leg. No citywide channel like the Special Operations Divisions that we depend on for the majority of the calls we respond to ever repeated a level 1 mobilization for a person shot, let alone confirmed shots fired. There would have been a child shot in the community that night, that morning, and no one but who was there would have known because he was going to survive his injuries. Citywide 4 used to be a frequency we could listen to before it was encrypted over the spring, which featured the robbery divisions of the NYPD that had the okay to conduct extended high-speed pursuits across the city that often caused crashes or pedestrian strikes. We can't hear anything from them anymore. It's only 2 more paragraphs. I just got
thank
back
you.
from.
We have, hold on.
I ju-
Thank you so much. We have lots of people who want to testify. You can submit it to me,
Okay.
and we will have it on record. But I have to go to the next person. Thank you so much.
All right.
You're good.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. My name is Tim Sheld, and I am the national chair of the Radio, Television, Digital News Association, the RTDNA we're known as. It's the world's largest organization, advocacy group made up of digital and broadcast journalists. We speak for the people that run the newsrooms in cities all across America. We've been dealing with encryption from city to city. I know we've heard about Chicago and Las Vegas. I would ask you to look at Palo Alto, and I would invite you to look up Palo Alto with the NYPD brass. It's a city that went down the route of encryption and then pulled back when a new administration came. They changed their mind because they did a thoughtful process of digging into it, and they realized that they could accomplish some of the things that you need to accomplish. And thank you for being here, by the way, and we appreciate you being here. It is a worthwhile example of changing your mind. That's what life is about. My testimony, most people have already said what I had written, and you can read what I had written. But what I want to tell you is, other than thank you for being here, is I have great optimism about this city, with the passion of people like this group in front of me, the passion of the panel that was before you. These are people that want to serve this city and the good offices of this city. And we're doing them a disservice. With all due respect to the NYPD, we are raising them to be our adversaries, to be your adversaries. They're not your adversaries. They're your partner. They serve the city just the way you do. And I think the NYPD needs to hear that. They need to hear the passion. It's not just about my pocketbook. I'm losing money, I'm losing the ability to do my job. They're losing the trust. They've lost the trust of young people. We need to find a way to win it back. Imagine the success story that we could write in this city if together we came up with some sort of a process that we could find a middle ground that would win back the trust of young people that are covering the city with this kind of passion. To me, that's going to be the success story that the city council might be able to help author. And so the other thing that I would say to you, with all due respect to the chief who came here, and I understood he was sort of fed to the lions, as they say. That was his job. It's fine. He did a fine job. But he said the most important thing that was said here today in my ears. He said technology is not DCPI. You know what that means? That his office is working on the concepts of how these radios will work. We need DCPI to the table. Public information is who needs to sit and meet with us. Not to do anything for us, but to sit. We're halfway there. Come to us, read our papers, sit with us, and together we'll find a solution to this. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Can you just state for the record your name so we have it? And anyone who's testifying after, just state your name first for the record, and then you can continue with your testimony.
Can I also just add, in the 20 seconds that I came back, I was also on the streets of New York. I was a reporter at WCBS News Radio 880 for 20 years, ABC News in this city, and I was the news director at WCBS News Radio 880. So I speak from the experience of covering the streets like these young people are doing today. So
thank you.
My name's Lloyd Mitchell. I'm a freelance photographer.
Thank you.
Dakota Santiago, freelance photographer.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.
I think these guys might. No.
So we have Andrew next.
Hello, City Council, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to talk about NYPD and what they have been doing to me for years. Now, first, I'd like to say I want to appreciate how law enforcement protects the city from harm and from the criminals that we have existing here in New York City. However,
Red means go. So, is it red?
Here, use this one.
Oh, that would cut me off. On? On?
Make sure you're talking to the microphone.
Okay, sure. All right, can you reset my 3 minutes, please? Okay, thank you. My name is Andrew, and first I would like to say I do appreciate how law enforcement, NYPD, protects the city from harm from the criminals that we have here in New York City. However, law enforcement, some of them like to be corrupt, and they have been attacking me for years, and I have been writing government officials. For example, this news program, Radio 99.5 FM, they have mentioned on the radio how law enforcement make people homeless and get people fired from their jobs, like Colin Kaepernick, he's a football player. So also, just a flyer I have that shows the same thing, how law enforcement would terrorize people, not only in New York City, but throughout America. I'm too am a victim of law enforcement terrorizing me as well. So law enforcement had got me fired from my job. I don't know why they did that, but that's the court case. They got me fired. I've been writing government officials, allowing them to know what's going on. And law enforcement like to cover up things. So they say that they have transparency. When they attacked me in 2022, I had asked them for the body cam. They refused to issue me the body cam when they attacked me because they knew what they were doing was incorrect. This body cam, March 5th, 2022, they attacked me on Roosevelt Avenue. Not only does law enforcement attack me, but they attack members from their own police department. They had thrown Adrian Schoolcraft inside the sidewalk because he had exposed the corruption and terrorism. They did the same thing to Nelly Gomez, a New York police detective as well. So when people have evidence against corrupt people in law enforcement, they toss them inside the sidewalk against their will just to shut them up. So this is a tool that law enforcement has in their arsenal to terrorize people. And they have been doing this to me for years because I put this online in 2013 that they have been attacking me. That's why I have shirts that says law enforcement assaulted me in 2 states. So every time I go to different lawyers in different states, they have been blocking me from hiring lawyers to sue them in court. For example, police brutality, that's against the law. Violating civil rights, that's against the law. When Adrian Schoolcraft, the New York police officer that exposed corruption and terrorism, they threw him in the sidewalk, he sued. When they threw me in the sidewalk, I can't sue. So like in 2 different states, they keep violating my rights. I can't speak English anymore. They keep violating my rights. Man, like I can't sue them. So I came here to ask the city members for assistance, somebody to investigate what's going on with law enforcement. Why is it that they're attacking me, but they're attacking people throughout New York and throughout America?
Thank you so much.
Sure. I have flyers as well.
Okay, you can pass them to me.
Anybody need flyers?
Kevin Downs?
Yes, my name is Kevin Downs. I'm a freelance photographer. I've worked with several newspapers here in New York, and also I'm with Redux Photo Agency. I just am. I don't like encryption. I just want to put that out there. I think it's bad for New York and also marginalized communities here in New York. I cover mainly immigrants and Hispanic communities and also my own community in Middle Village. And I just want us to be able to provide that service to New Yorkers. And the police also, when I'm working at night, and I ride up onto a police crime scene, the police are actually happy to see us there. You know, they are literally happy to see us walk up there with our cameras. And these guys want us to tell their story of them doing that job. You know, and without us there, we can't tell their story. We can't tell the story of the person who was killed that night. You know, I rolled up onto 2 people in Upper Manhattan who were shot, plus their dog, by a neighbor. The police were actually happy to see me there. And they come up and talk to you and tell you what not to do and stuff like that. And you say, yes, sir. And then when you leave, you say, be safe, guys.
Amen.
And I don't want us to lose that in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
The press is a vital part of telling the story about this town. Otherwise, I would have stayed home and I would be covering the border all the time.
Thank you so much,
You're welcome.
Kevin. It's a very good perspective for us to hear.
Thank
I appreciate that. I appreciate you both.
I'd like to mention
Next
my
we have Todd.
email for people to contact me in case they could assist me with law enforcement attacking me
No,
before they
sir.
murder me.
Sir?
Before they murder me. Corrupt Cops attacking me at YouTube. That's the YouTube channel and the email. Corrupt Cops attacking me before they murder me. Thank you.
I know. Todd, we have you online? Aviv. I'm sorry, Aviv Citron?
Mr. Citron, you can begin. Looks like we're having a problem with your audio. Mr. Citron, we're going to have to come back to you. Is there anybody else in the room that wishes to testify that's name has not been called yet? If so, please see the sergeant at arms in the back. But I believe Mr. Citron is our last panelist. Can you select a different microphone, Mr. Citron? It should be on the bottom left of your Zoom window.
Hi, Mr. Citron. We can accept your written testimony because we seem to have technical difficulties. Would you like to log off and log back on and see if that works? We'll be here. Okay. Hi, Erica. Are you ready to testify? You're muted. Okay. Okay, please hold. Erica, let's see if Mr. Citron is ready. You want to unmute yourself and see if you got it? We can't hear you. Do we have Robert Roth? If you want to unmute yourself, do we have you?
I am at home recuperating from an accident, and I have asked counsel to receive my testimony in writing.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for your testimony.
It doesn't look like Erica.
So, Mr. Citron, and anyone else on the line, it seems like we may have a little difficulties hearing you. You can submit your testimony online. So I want to thank everyone for coming out here today for this very important hearing. And with that, this hearing is adjourned.